Hi, guys. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to Untimely Meditations with your host, Lord Hellespont V, your favorite pseudo intellectual, joining you live from Los Angeles. Guys, we have a lot of exciting new releases today that have, in fact, been coming in since the last few days. Um, Look, we complain a lot about this new age of social media and the internet in terms of its effects on the watch market. But hey, there's some good things. We have this little community of ours on YouTube, and we also have these new watch releases that happen year round. We don't just have to wait for the shows, we don't have to wait for Basel every year. We see new watches coming out every other day, basically. And today we are going to talk about three new releases in particular. Zenith just did a collaboration with Philips watches and especially Aurel Bax and Alexander Rothby. Um, Oris celebrated its birthday on June 1st with a new watch. They have been doing these Herstein editions for the last 3 years. So we are going to explore the latest one of that, which is Herstein edition 2022. Um, and then there's also a very cool dive watch that Longine just dropped. We're going to look at all three of those and possibly more. I'm sure you are already keeping track of some new releases, some new watches that have just come out in the last few days, and you can let me know of those. I'm gonna let the list populate a little bit, and then we are going to begin. Gonna start with the Zenith, which is a very exclusive model, and probably it's going to be out of reach for most of us mortals. But nevertheless, it's a very cool watch. And it's a very fascinating collaboration between Zenith, as you know, one of the heritage brands, um, legendary designer of the El Primero high beat automatic chronograph movement, of course, a brand that still retains a lot of its status and a lot of its appeal, even as it is owned by one of those luxury conglomerates in LVMH. Apparently, they came together with Philips watches, especially a discussion that was started by Alexander Gottby and Aurel Bax, who were fascinated by their heritage caliber 1350, which, as you can see here, marks the word observatoire, the observatory of Neuchâtel specifically, that was at the time certifying these uh, movements, chronometric specification. So for this particular watch, which is going to be produced in a limited edition of just 10 pieces, they basically brought out 10 of these heritage calibers from Zenith's own archives. And those calibers have been worked upon and finished by none other than Neuchâtel-based famous watchmaker Kari Voutilainen, who has also collaborated with his dial maker for this beautiful fish scale guilloche design that decorates the outer part of the dial. So you have something that looks very beautiful, cased in platinum, simple, gorgeous dress watch that has the heritage movement in it, as you can see, and that carries, as you see here as well, KV Karivoutalainen's signature. Pardon me. That is also signed Phillips, Bax, et Rousseau. Karivoutalainen, 1 of 10. This is the movement on its own by its beauty. And you see seconds on the subdial with that beautiful groove, like a old school vinyl record. Really a piece of unique, beautiful, classic design, undisturbed by anything, just about the perfect dress watch, of course, a very select, elegant, and exclusive one indeed. The original OC says, is that dial carved or just stamped? It's not stamped. It's guilloche work, original OC. We will read a little bit about it. I haven't been able to find an independent source on this, but we will read from Hodinki's description of it. It's done by the dial maker that usually collaborates with Kari Voitalainen for his own pieces. Eric L, welcome, by the way, OC, for the channel. Eric L says, looks nice. Is it swimmable with a screw down crown? I don't think I would take this out for a swim or spin. This is just for your eyes only. If you remember that beautiful scene in This Is Spinal Tap, where he's showing his guitar collection, right? And there's one of these guitars, it still has its price tag on, and he just doesn't let the documentarian touch it, right? He says, don't even look at it. Don't even look at it. But if I were to play it now, it would have this beautiful sustain. So it's that kind of watch. You are supposed to safe queen it. Don't even stare too much at it. It might just fall into pieces. But joking aside, obviously, at $140,000 a pop, existing in that exclusive limited edition of 10 pieces, it's not a watch that you can treat like a Rolex steel stunner. Jimmy says, nice watch indeed. Hello all, and upvote. Thank you for the reminder, Jimmy. Dirk Diggler says, hello, man. Nice to see you. Double D joining us as always. Thank you. Eric L says, joking, of course. Yes, you're not even allowed to joke about it, Eric. We don't want this watch to be compromised in any way. Spinal Tap, turn it up to 11. Yes, this is right. This is 11 out of 10 probably. This is the prototype, and then you have 10 more. This is number 11 of Observatoire Zenith. But goddamn, it's a beautiful watch. The reborn Zenith Caliber 135 Observatoire is a limited edition of 10 pieces available exclusively through the auction house. So Philips, as you might know, has collaborated with Zenith before on a small run of 2 custom chronographs some years back. In this case, these are not being auctioned off for charity or otherwise. I don't know, maybe part of the proceeds might still go to some sort of charity. But they have been building basically on that collaboration. And this is the next one. So apparently this was a caliber that was mass produced at the time for about 11,000 examples, it's estimated, between the years of 1948 and 1962. The movements can frequently be found in the original Port Royal collection. These were exclusively created for observatory testing and were never intended to be cased. The 135-0. The gold-plated movements were the absolute cream of crop for Zenith at the time, eventually going on to claim over 230 best-in-class chronometry prizes through the movement's production years. Right, and this is again, I think, a collaboration that adds value to all the elements involved. Right, Kari Voutilainen shows once again. He flexes his horological muscles, so to speak. He gets to put his own signature on it, on a watch that also carries the mark of a grand maison, so to speak, a heritage maker. Phillips again takes another step towards claiming the place that was once held perhaps by Antiquorum as the auction house that takes care of wristwatches. And finally, of course, Zenith gets to claim their own heritage in producing these chronometric, extremely accurate, certified, and award-winning calibers. It's a very classically proportioned case, 38 millimeters by 10.35, round, of course, executed in platinum, sharply tapered lugs, a large crown, smooth polished bezel, and a brushed case band. The black dial on each is slightly domed, made of silver, right? The dial is made of silver in a matte black and were individually crafted at Complemine, Voutilainen's own dial-making workshop in Saint-Sulpice, Switzerland. Sector dial style layout. Each dial has a matte black central portion surrounded by the outside ring of a textured guilloche decoration. So, right, and all the applied markers are apparently made of rhodium-plated German silver. So it does kind of carry out that silver material all over. Original OC says, "Dang, the graining of the strap look cheap." Hey, it's just a black leather strap. I guess they could have chosen something a little more extravagant, but I think they wanted to match the vibes of that matte black center of the silver dial. So this is basically hand-guided machine work, right? If you want to learn more about the art of guilloche or engine turning in decorating watch cases and later dials, you might want to take a look at George Daniels's book on watchmaking. Additionally, Joshua Shapiro, who has his own workshop here in Southern California, has given a very detailed and informative lecture to the Horological Society of New York, which is posted on their YouTube channel. So it's not stamped, it's not laser engraved. It's basically the kind of work done by an old school engine that is hand guided. Looks like a vintage Omega Constellation. The original OC, that's Dodo Bird leather, maybe. Original OC says, love the dial, the cutoff index at 6 bothers me. It happens, man. We gotta, it's always the case that we gotta find something to nitpick about when it comes to these sorts of watches. I think they couldn't have done it better, honestly. If you're gonna have the seconds on subdial, which is what this watch really asks for, being a very old school dress watch, you can't put it too much towards the center, right? That subdial needs to be at 6 o'clock. So unless you are gonna completely get rid of those applied index markers at 6 o'clock and find some other way of dealing with that, I don't think that's a problem that can be fixed. It's more like a feature. Jimmy says, but of course, with it being connected to Karivutalainen, it commands this price. It is beautiful. Yeah, I mean, the name of the watchmaker, the fact that these were special versions of a movement that were never cased before, 10 pieces right out of the Zenith archive, and something that has done work done on it by one of the most elite watchmakers of our time. It's gonna sell like hotcakes, all 10 of them. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. It's a restored early 1950s Zenith Caliber 1350. Right. So this is the version of a commercial caliber they particularly put together for testing and competing at the Neuchâtel Observatory. And as you see, it is a low beating caliber. We have talked a little bit about this, but Bill Sanders at Watch Art Sci actually has a very helpful series of short interviews that he conducted with watchmakers and representatives of some of the high horological brands that explain this particular necessity. Of course, one thing is to find a sort of balance between accuracy and aesthetics in a way, right? Lower beating caliber with a larger hairspring just looks more impressive when it's exposed like this, when it's exhibited like this. And of course, a lower beat movement reduces friction. So it basically makes for a watch that is longer lasting and with a longer power reserve too, right? Because a higher beat movement, which we will come to in a little bit with our Longine Ultracron, Longine Longines Ultracron, a high beating caliber can have reduced power reserve, although by now the technology has caught up enough that it's not miserable by any means. Here you have a manual caliber of a respectable power reserve, right under 2 days. Marco Ferrante, annoyed by the fact they're only making 10 of these and all going to auction. Not to auction, but to specialized clients, Marco. Feels like a cash grab. Of course it is a cash grab. This is the watchmaking industry based in Switzerland. What else? You think they're here for charity? Sucks because it is really nice and could potentially be made accessible to average collectors. Hey, I hope at some point, soon enough, they can come up with an interpretation or execution of this caliber, at least, if not necessarily all the different kinds of work that goes into the watch, and make that accessible. And again, they have to eat that bread, right? Just selling 10 watches for Zenith, at least, is not enough, right? It's something that they can use to, once again, flex their horological muscles, show off a little bit their own heritage, but they have to eat that bread somehow. So I'm sure they will bring back something with caliber 135, probably a hand-wound dress watch that will bring some of this beauty into their regular production line. Zenith and Philips could be radios. Yeah, transistor radios, maybe. Original OC says they could have made the index smaller and pointed. OC, I wonder sometimes whether you should send a CV into one of these watchmakers so they could have you head their design and heritage departments. Marco Ferrante, Jimmy asks, so the Cari premium is not justified. The index is a small nitpick. Also, can you discuss the number written on the subdial? Yes, that number is actually the number that's carried by the caliber. So let me pull that up again. Was as you guys know, we are gonna try to keep this as esoteric and as exclusive as possible. We're talking about unavailable, unobtainable watches. So let's talk more about the kind of content that brings us less than 10 viewers. So this is the number of the caliber, 3951097. And you see that same number is the one that's inscribed in the subdial as well. Number 3951097. Eric L says each movement having that kind of provenance is heavy stuff. It is. It's a very exclusive piece. Jimmy says Schwarz Etienne made a full Cari guilloche dial and bridges of movement were also guillocheed for a retail price of $36,575 US dollars, not 140,000. Yes. Eric L says, I'm doing cash grabs during this recession as well. Jimmy says, okay, this is out of my watch knowledge league, Marco, but I understand what you're getting at. Marco Ferrante says dial is 15K, throw in a decent movement and case, add 8K, add Zenith premium 3 to 5K, carry Zenith for about 28K. That to me seems justified. Hey, they will get back to you, Marco, if they can sell the 10 at $140,000. Something tells me that they won't have a problem. I mean, what is justified in this climate? Honestly, what is justified in this watch market? What is ever justified when it comes to a luxury product? For me, would I buy this watch even if I had the money? Probably not. But then it's not what I'm looking for. I'm sure there are collectors out there who buy anything and everything that Voutilainen's or Voutilainen's hands touch. I'm sure there are collectors of Zenith who would be obsessed with getting a movement from directly from the archives that has never been cased before. And I'm sure there are many collectors who want to get on the good side of Aurel Bax and Alexander Kotby, so they can work out some deals with them with watches that don't even see the auction floor. So we're not just talking about value here as it could be financially justified. I mean, I think you would be very depressed, and I'm sure, Marco, you're this kind of person. You know how much each Rolex watch actually costs to make, period, in terms of those materials. Now, even if you add all sorts of premiums, and even if you kind of try to justify it with the heritage of the brand, you would not want to pay retail for Rolex after you know how much they're actually costing to make by that calculation, right? If that were our criterion, we would have a hard time justifying any luxury watch. The original OC says it's a platinum watch. It indeed is. Yeah, exactly. They will not have a problem selling these. Marco says, oh, they won't have a problem selling it. To me, it's just lame. Zenith can use this as a watch to gain an actual follower base. And I think they will. I think they will. Just not in this form. Maybe that Q dude on AC3 stream will get one. I don't know who Q is. He seems to have everything else. I like the nice sharp ridge on the bezel. Yeah, it's a nice piece of design, the platinum case itself. Eric L says that 50s era Observatoire certified movement can be recreated, but would never be the same way ever again. Yeah, I mean, it could be something like the Omega 321, right? They might build versions of it for the regular line, attach a certain premium to it, and make an entire line of hand-wound dress watches, maybe even in steel. It could be an interesting experiment, and I'm sure that would run somewhere between maybe $15,000 to $20,000. It's not going to have this dial. It's certainly not going to carry any signature or involvement of Kari Voutilainen, but it would still satisfy most of us enthusiasts, and I think that could be their next step. Very well, might be. So let's get to what is probably one of my favorites from these new releases. Oris in 1997 had this little watch they call World Timer, right? Essentially, it's really a GMT watch, right? Or a dual time, you might say, right? You have the home time here, you have the travel time here, and a date, of course, and you have the pushers, you know, to advance the jump hour on the right and left. And they have been doing these Hirstein limited editions since 2020. They did a 65 amateur hour, as always. They have been doing these Hirstein limited editions since 2020. They did chronograph version of 65 in that year, cased in bronze, as you can see here, which was an interesting piece of work. And it had their bear on the case back, which is, I think, a close second, but only second place to my favorite bear, the polar bear, of course. In 2021, they came out with another Hirstein edition, again, a limited piece of their big crown with a 5-day power reserve, with the date indicator on the outer ring. And a lot of times, of course, they draw inspiration from their own earlier creations. I think this was a recreation of an earlier original they had from 1938, apparently. Look at that. That's a beautiful watch as well. And this year, they came out with a recreation of that world timer that I showed you earlier. It has, for that reason, very interesting case dimensions for our time, anyways. It's executed all in stainless steel, mounted on a stainless steel bracelet, 36.5 millimeters in case diameter. They have updated the pushers a little bit, right? They're more rectangular now. There's a day and night indicator there. Plus and minus corresponding to how you engage the jump hour. And then finally, well, seconds on the subdial, of course, home time right here, day and night indicator. And of course, I'm assuming, I have not seen the watch in person yet, but I'm assuming that it actually wears quite larger than what that 36.5 millimeter case size might indicate. With the pushers and everything, it seems to have quite a unique presence. And once again, you have the Oris bear in the back, a close second in popularity and cuteness to the polo bear. A limited edition of 250 pieces, number engraved, special wooden presentation box. The dial, instead of that silver, is now kind of a gradient blue to black. Again, those beautiful groves right under the Arabic numerals. I think it's quite a nice watch. And by the time of this live stream, it's still available. Let's check it again. Right, to the point that you can choose your number. And it's listed at 4,300 US dollars. I think they have a similar execution of dual time in their lineup now, which is the Big Crown Pro Pilot World Timer, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see that. Right here, that compared to this, that has a ginormous case. I think it's like a 44. And in this case, everything is actually adjusted, manipulated, arranged from the crown. But yes, you have basically a very similar movement in this. This was the classic watch that is now revived in the Herstein edition 2022. On that note, I actually, after a very quick search, I didn't even spend all that much time on it, but I was able to find, oh, by the way, yes, so before we move on to that, so that watch, the other Oris World Timer, which is in regular production and in a pretty much larger case size, is 3,600. And frankly, I mean, it's not too big of a premium, honestly, considering that this limited model actually comes on a full steel bracelet and everything. Its dimensions might even be preferable to you. Who knows? Not such a bad deal, considering how much Oris has been jacking up their prices recently. 4,300 doesn't seem so unreasonable for them. Again, for those who like Oris, who prefer Oris, that could be an interesting option to explore. But I was saying that I did a quick search on what I can find, and there was actually an example on First Dibs, which usually extremely overpriced, by the way. This is that 1997 dual time or world timer that they reproduced in this limited version. It's, I think, in its own right, it's a beautiful piece. It has an exhibition case back in this case. Same dimensions, 36.5 millimeter case. And there, our price is $37.50. So it's not outrageous, shall we say, considering the brand's other offerings and how much they sell them for. Let me read a little bit of the comments Omar thinks, I think that's a really good looking watch, and Oris in general is underrated, in my opinion. Yes, I don't disagree. I think Oris really gives a lot of the more well known brands like Omega or Tudor a run for their money. So if you're interested in their designs, if you have somehow formed a bond with this brand, this could be an interesting pickup. Jimmy, a lot of that was a bit gross, as one commenter wrote. Yeah, I didn't watch it, guys, so I don't know. Peeping Time says, I had a vintage Oris with a copper dial. Yeah, they have their own pedigree, honestly. You might mistake them for a hipster brand if you just look at their executives, but hey. Marco Ferrante says, I agree Oris is underrated, but I'm sorry, this is fugly. Let's remove it from the screen. No. I think it's actually a great looking watch, honestly. The looks of it is what I like most about this watch. I'm not really impressed with the dual time execution. I feel like there's too much going on the dial without much justification for it. I guess that's why the GMT Master has been such a staple and such a bread and butter model for Rolex Sports for so long, because it's um, very easy to read. It doesn't take a lot of extra space on the dial. Um, yeah, but otherwise, I think, from an aesthetic standpoint, I think this is an interesting watch. It's just too much real estate for what is essentially a very simple function. 4K LOL. Omar says, Marco, I'm glad that you don't hate Oris. I was actually talking about a watch he mentioned before this. Oh yeah, you mean the Zenith. I like the dial colorway, but the more I look, too much going on, in my opinion. I completely agree. Paul Silesius, hey man, come here. Nice to see you. Sorry, but this Zenith is nothing but marketing gimmick at 130K. Compare that to the new uh, Recepi, something. Gotcha. It is a marketing gimmick. It is a marketing gimmick for sure, but a successful one, if you ask me. If I had to choose between Zin and Oris, I would choose Zin. But then again, I like their designs and their models and their aesthetic better than Oris. Not necessarily because they're objectively better. I think Zin and Oris are actually, again, Zin probably is better value. But I think at that price range, they give really a run for Tudors and Omega's money. Paul Silesius says very little Kari in the project. Yeah, he basically just assembled the movements, it seems. That's true. Jimmy says this big crown is quite nice, but too large for me. We were talking about the big crown world timer as an alternative to this, but yes, this stands at 36.5 millimeter in case size. The big crown world timer they have is 44.7. He's doing part of the dial and assembling, regulating, and finishing the movement. He's not even doing the dial. That's just his dial maker that does the dial. So he's not personally involved in. I mean, I'm pretty sure that he doesn't work the Rose engine to do that guilloche decoration on the dial himself. Jimmy says, I prefer Oris design much more, but Zin better engineering. I like Zin's design better, and I think it's a better value for money. But hey, Zin is a pretty strong aesthetic. You know, either you're into it or not. I don't think there are two ways about it. Oris is a little more open, a little more generic, if I might use this word. Not meaning to offend anyone, but Zin is very strong. Um, Omar says, good question, Jimmy. Oris has a bigger lineup, a little less tool watchy, in my opinion. Zin, better value for money. I'm glad we agree. Paul Silesius says, if you had unlimited money, what world time GMT would you get? If I had unlimited money, I would not get another GMT or world time. I have I have a GMT Master root beer. I have a GMT Master 2 in 16710 Coke. I would rather get another kind of watch. I find, yeah, world time watches are very romantic, very very appealing to a certain ethos, I guess. If you, either you buy into it or not. I don't. For those who buy into it, you know, all that cloisonné world maps that decorated all the names of these global destinations, um, basically carve out that space for the world map. I guess it has something of poetic or romantic significance. To me, I'm fine with my GMT masters when it comes to that particular function. The interesting release, I'm not necessarily saying I would go for this, was from Hermes, actually, from Watches and Wonders. It's a watch they call Le Temps Voyageur. Um, and I hope they have a video of this because it's very hard to figure out otherwise. But basically, the whole hours and minutes dial travels around around the dial as you switch time zones. Um, and in the steel version, it's not inaccessible. It's not unrealistic. After all, they have their own, in-house movement in it that takes something. Where is it? No, it's not. Probably already sold out. Quite frankly, I'm not gonna. But basically, there's the pusher, as you see, and that helps you move the time zone, and the dial travels with it, right? With the red arrow actually showing the place. And you have Hermes original store's address there, replacing Paris on the dial, which is a nice little touch by them. Yeah, so this is an interesting execution of it. Um, as you might know, Hermes has a stake in the movement maker Vaucher. So they work with them to design their own movements for, I'm guessing, most watches, but especially these sorts of flagship models. So this is an interesting execution, but again, you have to be captivated by it. Frankly, I don't buy into it, right? But hey, the platinum titanium one I think is quite salty in terms of the price, but the steel one with the blue dial is the money here, and um, I think it's both more wearable in terms of its dimensions and certainly more affordable. I need to double check the prices again. Um, yeah, so the black dial titanium platinum one is 28,825, and the 38 millimeter blue dial is 22,550. Piruka is here. Hey man, what's up? Um, yeah, let's go back a little bit. Jimmy, Omar, good points. I tend to prefer Zin mostly, but Oris are nice sometimes too easily. Hey, Oris is not a shitter watch. They might be a little overpriced for what they are, but it's exactly the kind of brand, you find a watch you like, you want to get it, you go to a dealer and try to negotiate a discount, or you go into the secondary market and get yourself a good deal. It's I think in the secondary market especially, Oris is can be a very good deal. Absolutely far from it. It's not a shitter watch by any means. Bert K says, I think Oris is better than Zen. Baron von Müller, great to see you in a proper watch chat, Marco, and great to see you are happy at your new job with Luxury Bazaar. Yes, congratulations, Marco. Vince Fine Arts, thoughts on one of my favorite, Bell& Ross Space 2. Let's pull that up. We will circle our way back to Longines. And again, if you want to bring up again the Zenith Observatoire model or the Oris World Timer, their Herstein 2022 edition, we can always pull that up as well. But yes, we are going to talk about the Longines Ultracron diver in a little bit. Bell & Ross Space 2. Let's check it out. Mm. Oh wow, this is a very classic design. It's actually made by Zin, no? All right. It's really in terms of the layout is a little different, but in terms of the color scheme and the case design, it gives me totally Speedmaster Mark II vibes. And it does say on the dial Bell & Ross by Zin. Fascinating. I am guessing um, it probably from the layout and the seconds at 9 o'clock, I'm guessing it has Vajou 7750, which is one of the time-honored workhorse chronograph movements you can find all over the place. It's a beautiful little watch, man. I never knew that Zin made watches for Bell & Ross. I wish they stayed right here, to be honest. I'm not really with it when it comes to Bell & Ross these days. That particular square shaped case design never really appealed to me. But this is kind of cool. Hey, I like it. I like it. Eric says Zin has been making watches for serious hardcore users for quite some time. That places them in a different space than Oris, in my opinion. More or less what I think as well. Marco says, thanks to the Baron. Peeping Time, I emailed a picture of vintage Oris. Right, let's check it out. Let's check it out. Yes, yes. Our friend Peeping Time. Let me download that picture so I don't risk in any way exposing or doxing you, my friend. Peeping Time. This is Peeping Time's vintage Oris. I love those syringe hands, man. It's a very cool aesthetic, and that bronze dial is really to die for. Amazing. Speaking of overpriced watches, this kind of watch, Patek makes something like this um, tomorrow. Even if they make it in steel with a Salmon dial like this, a 300 watch, seconds on the sub dial, they will ask 50K for it. So just to put things in perspective, right? The value and luxury watches just don't go together. This is a beautiful watch. Peeping Time, thank you for sharing it. It really, you said it's copper or bronze, but in either case, that looks like um, that looks exactly what all Salmon dials recently aspired to. It's a beautiful piece. Do you consider Hermes a proper watchmaker, or are they a luxury brand making watches? I'm unfamiliar with them beyond being a fashion brand. This is a conversation that we can have with Cartier. This is a conversation we can have with Bulgari. This is a conversation we can have with Hermes. All three of these brands, but especially Bulgari and Hermes, have been making strides in terms of proving their horological pedigree. Hermes chose the path of basically updating some of their classic designs and finding finally the kinds of models that hit it with men. I think H08 was probably their first successful men's watch in quite some time. But they're now producing in-house movements through their own maker, Vaucher, right? I think that puts them in the conversation for a serious brand. Now, do they have an entire line of watches that would appeal to you? No, but hey, if you like the H08 or if you like the Le Temps Voyageur, it could be a worthy purchase. But again, the price tag is what it is, especially with Le Temps Voyageur. H08 is actually very accessible, even at the list price. And it is actually retailed by authorized dealers too. You can probably get a discount on an Hermes watch from an authorized dealer. And I don't know. I'm kind of a fan of H08, actually. I don't know if you're familiar with the design. So let me pull up the. I mean, look, there are two different ways of looking at this particular watch when it comes to Hermes H08. You can see it as a way of updating a very classical field watch vibe in a modernist design. And Hermes is all about design, right? This watch, they have actually devised a new font for the Arabic numerals they used on this watch. Same font is used in that date window as well. You can already see, the number 4 and how that peculiar shape is reflected on the date as well. It comes with all sorts of different options, but here it is on an iconic Hermes orange. Um, nice déployant buckle there. Titanium case. Titanium bezel. Different kinds of polished, mirror polished and satin brushed surfaces. So it does play a little bit into that luxury, sports chic design language as well. I think it's a very cool piece. Hey, you might also say it's just an expensive um, Seiko turtle, and I can't disagree with you on that either. It really depends on whether you connect with the watch on an emotional level, because what else can justify paying about 5K for a watch like this unless you actually buy into the whole thing? The movement itself, as well as the rotor, is laser engraved with their H. Um, Again, an in-house movement built for them by Vaucher, H 1837, which is their founding date, of course. Honestly, again, I think this is a very cool sports watch. Could be a great summer watch for the right person. But hey. Marco Ferrante says Hermes is excellent. They source all their movements. Actually, no, they have the same movement maker as Parmigiani Fleurier. Vaucher makes movements for both Hermes and Parmigiani Fleurier. And they have the best leather straps in the business, no doubt about it. That's why I exclusively use them. Jimmy says the two different approaches to lock design is interesting on this Hermes. He's talking about Le Temps Voyageur. Hermes Squelette Lune. This is their moon phase, right? Yeah, that's a cool watch. As much as I hate skeletonized watches, I can see why this could be appealing. Though I have no clue why this is called Squelette Lune. I must be missing something. Oh, there we go. There we go. You have the moon phase for both northern and southern hemisphere there. And it's actually a beautiful, beautiful depiction of the moon. Very realistic. Yeah. Very cool watch. I do despise skeletonized dials, so I can't find anything more to say about it. But your beautiful slim movement, this time caliber H 1953, an ultra thin movement. Cool watch with stitching to match the heat blued slim baton hands. Cool piece. GB Vol says those brands are to watches as rhodium is to precious metals. Thanks for the info, Marco. Peeping time, it's metallic, so it's either dark or light orange depending on the angle. Yeah, the Peeping Time, of course, is talking about the copper dial that his vintage Oris had. Jimmy was talking about the Bell & Ross Space 2. Bell & Ross and those big square things are not my jam. Yeah, not my jam either, but that was a cool Bell & Ross watch, Bell & Ross Space 2, Peeping Time. Nice watch. Looks like a World War II era watch. Yeah, I will read it in about, yeah. Whole Milk says Hermes H08 is really nice. Am I going to New York City in October? No, no longer. No longer. I've been exiled. I've been exiled. I'm no longer welcome in the Archieverse. So they have made that pretty clear. I guess I'm not really welcome for that particular occasion either. It doesn't matter. New York City is my home. I can go there some other time. Marco Ferrante says, wish HO8 didn't have a date, but otherwise, I think it's a great watch and excellent design. Hey, about not having dates, we are coming to our next new release, which is the Longine Ultracron Diver. Parmigiani owns, Hermes owns part of it. If they had exclusive rights to Vaucher, I think I have a pretty good grasp on the dictionary definition of what the word exclusive means. Hermes wouldn't be able to use them, right? So there we go, Marco. Aussie Expat says, upvote. Hey, thank you for the reminder. We have just, by the way, crossed the 1 hour threshold. So if you have been listening to this and if you have been enjoying the live stream, if you have been learning from it, please feel free to upvote, spread the word, share the link on other platforms, help me get that much closer to 1,000 subs. And if you want to support the channel, if you want to encourage me in creating more content, running live streams like this, you can always consider a PayPal contribution at lordhellespontv@gmail.com, lordhellespontv@gmail.com. I also have a Cash App, $LHVVV, $LHVVV. Y2K, hey man, nice to see you. Thank you for reminding people to upvote, and good luck with the work. I'm sure you're breaking a leg over there. Hey, GB Vol, I'm sorry about not reading your messages in a timely manner, but it is difficult to run a show on your own entirely. So feel free to jump on and help out a little bit. The link is there. You are more than welcome to be part of my panel always, as is everyone else. So please do jump on. So let's look at Longine Ultracron Diver. And this is probably my favorite release that I'm gonna discuss today. And since Marco was just talking about date windows, this might actually please us quite a bit, because what we have here right out of the gate is a pretty respectable diver, 300-meter depth rating, screw down crown, beautiful cushion shaped case. You have a unidirectional rotating bezel, 120 clicks, and the bezel itself is also loomed at 12 o'clock and at the quarters as well. Otherwise, it's engraved and filled in with red lacquer there and loomed again at 12 o'clock and at the quarters. And it's actually a sapphire bezel, not aluminum, not ceramic, but sapphire. Big Joe.
How's it going, Lord?
Smoking Joe, how are you? How's the buyer's remorse today?
Actually, I got a very interesting story, but it'll be for after stream. But overall,
Okay.
we're sticking with it. So
Okay. All right. That's good. That's good. Piruka says very 70s vibe, and you will see why in a moment. This is the watch they were recreating, basically, Swiss. This 1967 or 1968 diver, they have somehow streamlined the case. They have put a high beat movement inside it, as they did originally, but it's a newer movement, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Of course, the loom is now in superluminova rather than tritium, and the bezel is sapphire rather than aluminum in the original. So let's bring up that new version again.
I thought you were looking at a Doxa originally, because that's what the design reminds me of. It's a Doxa.
Well, I mean, Doxas produce very respectable divers, except this has a high beat caliber inside it, which beats at 36,000 half oscillations per hour, 5 hertz. You know, when a lot of the other brands like Zenith or Ganseiko put a high beat caliber, in any case, people go crazy about them and pay at least $6,000-$7,000. This watch is much less. We are going to come to that. It has this beautiful black grainy dial. Again, when Patek does the asphalt dial, somehow people are crazy enough to pay $70,000 to $100,000 about it. Here you have it where it actually fits in a real sports watch. And basically, it also has the new high beat caliber they designed that they collaborate with Time Lab, I think is the organization where they actually test wholly cased and completed watches. So it has an accuracy rating of +4 -6, I think, which is respectable. You know, nothing groundbreaking in any way. But this is a very cool watch. They also have it in. Let me pull up their page for it, because they have it in a few different configurations. Right here. They have it in the 7-link old school kind of steel bezel. What bezel? Bracelet. And it comes in this presentation box where they have the tool and an extra NATO strap that matches the color scheme of the dial.
What do they want for one of these things?
They want, if I'm not mistaken, they want 3,500.
Not sure I'd shell out that kind of coin for Longines.
Longines, mom jeans, I don't know, but the Ultracron is quite a fascinating concept. I think it's a move in the right direction. You know, I think they have reissued and streamlined and modernized a design that just looks cool. If you ask me, would I get the Oris or Longine from these things that I just presented? I would certainly go with this. Um, I guess because I'm a diver watch guy, that's partly what it is. I love me a cushion case, and there's no date, no nonsense.
So you're more of a no date
Pull it
guy,
this
huh?
back. It's just a nice piece of design, uninterrupted, beautiful.
How big is this?
This measures, you know how cushion cases wear though, but this measures, I think, at 43 millimeters.
I've never had a cushion case. Never.
Yeah, 43 millimeters. I mean, I'll show you. I'll show you something in a second. Um, but I have my King Turtle, for example, which is I think 45 millimeters. But even on my twigs, I can carry it. Bosser, hey, welcome. Peeping Time says, I'm not a fan of this one, by which he means the Longine. Whole Milk, this is the first Longine I like. Surprised they didn't ruin it for 5 stars. Hey, Big Meat, how's the sheep? Aussie Expat says, I'll hop on later to show off the Batgirl for Meech. Nice. I miss your presentations, Y2K. I completely agree. Peeping Time says, I prefer the similar Kontiki 1973. Not Kontiki 1973. Yes, it's a comparable watch for sure. It's a very comparable watch. This one has an objectively better movement in it, but you may or may not care about it. And the Kontiki itself, this is not a cheap watch. I think it should retail around 2,500. But yes, it's a good comparison. I mean, date or no date, I think that's what it boils down to between the two of them. But I do like the shark mesh bracelet on
Yeah, I was
this
about
one.
to say I've never had a mesh bracelet either. You know, as long as we're good on the list of things I've never had. I think it'd be interesting to experience one.
Mm. Yeah, so this has the high beat 5 hertz, 36,000 half oscillations per hour. I think the power reserve is 52 hours, which is quite good for a high beat movement. With the bracelet, it's 3,700, and on the strap, on the leather strap, I think it still comes with the extra NATO strap and the presentation box. It's 3,500.
So, is this like a limited run, or is this just a new release for them?
It's a new release. It's not going to be a limited run, but I think maybe the box editions might run out soon, and they might just start selling watches like with
So
either a
one could
NATO
wait
or
it out and
this.
scoop it up for like what, $2,500, $2,000.
I think you don't even have to wait out. If you have a good relationship with an authorized dealer, I think you can easily ask 20% off on something like this the minute it arrives.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a bad design, honestly.
Hmm?
I said it doesn't seem like a bad design at all.
Yeah. Aussie Expat hoping to come back to do that sometime soon for his presentations. Hey, watch out. Y2K, you're always welcome to jump on when you're not at work and when the time fits you. But I know, we basically need um another 24/7 live stream for you. Um Longines are slowly becoming respectable. Hey, Longines is a great heritage brand, but they have to, again, talking about those luxury conglomerates, Longines has to know its place. They have Tissot, they have Longines, they have Omega. They can't overstep their boundaries. I mean, there's a reason why Longines used to be the official timekeeper of the Olympics, and now it has ceded that completely to Omega. That is that. And I do like a lot of 3K between 1.5 to 3K. Longines has great watches, and this is a little above that. And I understand that once you get to 3.5, 4K, there's so much out there, especially with the secondary market. So I understand the hesitation about the price point, no doubt. But hey, our money is worth less as time goes by, and the watches are retail for higher and higher. Jimmy says, I quite like this. Longines Peeping Time says, Longines Heritage Diver is nice. I think that's a nice watch too. It just has too much going on the dial for me, and I don't really like the hands on that watch. Peeping Time. I will pull it up just for our reference. Yeah. It has an internal bezel that you can rotate with an extra crown here. The hands I really despise on this one, so I can never quite go into it. I do appreciate the new one they have simply because it just has such a beautiful, uninterrupted, balanced dial, especially with the elimination of that date window. And the bezel itself, the sapphire bezel, that's very attractive. Um, the colors, the red accents are quite nice. So I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, I like the cushion shape for divers. Be it the Turtle or Captain Willard. I've always been a fan of those Seikos. So this kind of is up my alley as well. Dirk Diggler says, how much do you think money comes into play for who does the Olympics? Well, I think money doesn't even come to play at this point. They're both owned by the Swatch Group, and Omega ranks higher than Longines for the Swatch Group, and I think that does it. I think it should be to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. Honestly, tens of millions of dollars, I would say. If we are talking about how much Swatch Group pays for the Olympics. I don't know. Try on a Breitling Super Ocean Heritage. Yes, that has a beautiful shark mesh bracelet. It's great for the summer, especially if you have longer hair on the wrists. I have very long hair on the wrists, so I will take that under advisement for sure, Y2K. Y2K says, no more 24-hour stream, please. Too much work and very tiring. Hey, Y2K, that's not my way. I don't put people to work. Certainly not for free. So
Yeah, I haven't been paid in months, Lord. Starting to wonder. The last check you gave me bounced. Need to have a talk about that.
I thought you were paying me in this arrangement, but I mean that's why you have my Cash App, don't you?
It's true. Yeah, I'm funding the office remodel of your plumbing, but I gotta start seeing some ROI back.
Guys, plumbing remodel sponsored and powered by Smokin' Joe. Dirk Diggler says, my wife has a nice woman's Longine that we got a school fundraiser for like 400, 500 bucks. Some Tissot with the 80-hour Power Reserve Powermatic. I like PRX and a few others. Yeah. The PRX Powermatic 80, that's a nice little watch. I think it's probably the best deal in terms of integrated bracelet watches. It actually has a nice bracelet. It wears well. I tried it on at
Whereas,
Felgmar.
do you find it wears larger than suggested size?
It does, yeah, a little bit.
I've heard a lot of guys complain about the size. Like it wears like, what is it? Like it's supposed to be a 40 mil, right? And
I think so, yeah.
I hear a lot of guys complain and saying like, oh, it's like a 42, 41 and a
Yes.
half.
Look, I mean, these sorts of integrated bracelet watches always wear larger. Like 39 millimeter is the jumbo in Royal Oak, right? That's the original case size. It certainly wears more like 41 to 42. This advertised size is 39.50 or 40, and roughly you can say it wears like a 42. And again, this is a watch that you can get in the secondary market for less than 500 for sure. And I'm sure, again, your Tissot dealer can easily give you a discount on the listed price as well. Peeping Time says PRX is a great design and value. Dirk Diggler says, I thought it was funny when Cam wanted to get paid. I think he does the annoying bit as a shtick.
No, it's not a shtick. It's him being like, well, it might be a half shtick, but like there's a portion of it where it's true.
Aussie Expat says Longine is classier. Title sponsor for horse jumping. Yeah, they do actually sponsor a lot of equestrian events, and everyone knows my fondness for equestrian ladies here. So, and Aussie Expat says, hey, chat to Chiara on the Longine site there. Chiara is a nice name. I have not met a non-hot Chiara, and I believe in that shit. I don't believe in anything superstitious, but I believe that names have types. Joe would have good experience on this. Have you met a Chiara who wasn't smoking hot?
I've only known two Chiaras, and you know what? Now that you mention it, yeah, I mean, one of them's, if you had a scale of 1 to 10, like a 6.5, and then the other one's like probably a good 8. So yeah.
And that averages out to 7+. So that's good.
Of course, to be fair though, Lord, one of them is a stripper, so take that into account.
And speaking of numbers, how would you rate yourself?
Oh fuck, let's not go there. I don't know. It depends on how many beers and individuals I've had. So like maybe a 4 on a good night. It depends on how hard you've been hitting the bottle. But being realistic, I put myself at a generous 3.5. Story of my life, though, to be frank.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly how I rate myself. 3.5 to 4, I think. Yeah. Please do some wine tasting. You look like you enjoy a good wine. I'm more of a hard liquor person. Scotch
hard liquor
is my tipple.
I'll play along.
Scotch is my tipple. I don't I don't still drink beer like this frat bro down here.
No, you drink martinis with the umbrella on it.
Hey, I would rather rather than drinking, what is that bullshit that they sell in a can? You guys
White
drink
Claw.
some of those? Yes. Instead of that, I would rather get like a pink cocktail with an umbrella in it.
Does it go with your mandals as well? Shit.
Would you like to answer this question or pass?
Actually, no. Yeah. So I think I've answered this once before already. So half, um, half Indian, and then the other half Hispanic. So, because I think I remember answering this one on Marcelo's channel.
Oh, that's by the way, I think that's exactly the same as Double D. Like he will have to confirm. Aussie Expat says, I'm more wine, good for gaming session. Mm-hmm. Well,
But
I
while we're
mean,
on the subject of Longines, I actually have a very interesting story, and perhaps I've already told this one,
go
probably
ahead.
more drunkenly before. But um, so I was, this was when I was still slinging cards. The workday had just ended, and I had the early shift, right? So this is like a Thursday, I believe, and I go down to where the bars are to grab some lunch, essentially, because like it was like 4 o'clock for me, anyways. So I had an early day off, and there's hardly anybody in the bars. So I sit down, and like one space over is an older gentleman. And as I'm waiting for my food, this is when I was first getting into watches, and then I was wearing a Mito at the time, a Mito Ocean Star,
Mhm.
45 mils, fucking comically huge on me. I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I thought it was a Rolex, for God's sakes. Um, so yeah, loud and obnoxious about it, and I decided to strike up a conversation with this gentleman because technically it was my job. Pitch yourself, especially if you're selling cars, bamboozle them. But the more we talked, we said, "Oh, he's like I'm a professor here at the local university." I said, "Oh, really? And like, how many more years you got left?" Um, he said, "Oh, not many." He said, "I've got like 2, 3 years left in the tank." He said, "I've been teaching for 40 plus years or whatever."
Okay.
Um, and yeah, we were talking about watches. I don't know how we got steered into the conversation. I said, "So, like, what kind of watches are you into, my guy?" He said, "Well," he said, hopefully when I retire, I've been eyeing this one particular watch for last 5 years. The wife knows about it. I've showed it to the wife. To this day, I still can't remember the reference, but it was a dress piece. Um, I think it was when I think about it, I think it wasn't anything current production. I think it was something that you would have to find vintage.
Mm. Okay.
Uh, and he said, "Yeah, he said it's so much money though. It's $2,000. And when I think about it nowadays, like $2,000 is nothing for you and me, Lord. I mean, I don't mean to sound like an arrogant prick any more than I do, but I mean, you get the point. We're used to spending, we're used to spending 5, 6,
Guys,
10 grand.
listen carefully. Joe is trying not to sound like an arrogant prick. Let's pay attention.
Any more than I am, all right? Any more than I am, all right? And to this day, I still think about that professor because, I had lunch and, his colleagues showed up and they started to have rounds of beers. And I took my leave, but I wondered to this day because he showed me a picture of his Longines and he was so passionate about it, the way he described it. I asked him like, "Oh, what drew you to it?" He's like, "Oh, it's just a cool watch, man." He said, "It's funky. It's something that I can realistically afford." He said, "Don't get me wrong." He said, "I'd love to have a Rolex. Everyone wants one of those." But he said, "It's just not realistic." He said, But he said,
Hmm.
"Hopefully, I'll get this when I retire." And I sometimes wonder about that older gentleman if he actually did secure his Longines.
No, I mean I think that's a beautiful story, because I honestly, it's all very relative. We just started talking about these $140,000 limited edition of 10 piece Zenith Kari and Philips auctions collaboration, and we are here talking now about, you know, $3,500, $2,000 watches, and even that is quite a lot of money. I mean, I had conversations with a lot of people about Seikos, and you know, they need to save. They need to put aside money to get the Seiko
Absolutely.
that they want. So it's all relative, and it really behooves us to think of how much effort, how much passion, and how much work it takes for people to put aside a certain kind of money on a watch. And a lot of times, even if they have the
Right.
money, they don't want to put it in a single watch, right? They have
Well, they're
other
smarter
priorities.
than us, Lord. They're smarter than us. You know, they don't want to get they don't want to get a little bit of consumer debt on the credit card. They want to do it the right way. You know, props to that.
Wait, who's Mike?
I don't see. Is Mike the Snake on the panel?
But no, I unfortunately I also don't have a producer like Green Room in the background who can pull out these sorts of characters. So I apologize. But yeah, right now I just finished my coffee. I'll probably pour myself another cup and get some water. And maybe it can be story time with Smoking Joe for the next 2-3 minutes. Is that okay?
Oh yeah. Do I have stories to tell you? Some appropriate, some not.
Start with the inappropriate one.
We have a PG audience, but you know, I do need to top myself off here. So give me 1 minute. Okay, hold on. I gotta read this. My uncle is pretty rich but lives a frugal life, if I'm pronouncing that right. My crazy loudmouth wife told my uncle, check out your nephew's new watch. I think he was pissed when he found out how much the Folex was. Interesting. See, I don't know. I mean, I get why some people are timid and shy of telling others what how much their watch costs. To me, it never bothered me as long as it's asked in a tasteful manner. I guess, like if you just ask me straight up, like if we're at a pub, a bar, or whatever, and you ask me, "Hey, yo, dude, how much your watch cost?" I think I might take that a bit offensively, but if you can hold a conversation and just kind of casually ask, like, "Hey, it's a nice watch, man. You know, mind if I ask you the brand, how much it costs?" Like, I would probably have not an issue telling you how much it costs. I am very private about it. Yeah, to each their own. To each their own on if they want to tell price on that. Um, I know some people get extremely anal about it.
Did someone say anal?
Well, okay, well, interesting that you show up on that, but you know, it
Yes.
raises a lot more questions than answers when it comes to you, Lord. But um, no, Dirk Diggler was just saying something about his uncle, how he's extremely rich and uh, but he likes to keep it on the down low. And his wife says something about his nephew getting a new watch.
My uncle is pretty rich but lives a frugal life. My crazy loudmouth wife told my uncle, check out your nephew's new watch. I think he was pissed when he found out how much the Rolex was. He says, check this out. You can get this fake for a 150. Yes, and if it says Steinhardt on the dial, you'll pay 6 times that, I think. I'm very private about it. Hey, people can get very judgmental. You know, they spend all kinds of crazy money for God knows what, and and it just disappears into thin air. And when you spend more than $1,000 on a watch that you wear on your wrist on a daily basis, people judge you pretty heavily about it. And you have to be, in most contexts, you have to be very private about it. You have to be, and it exposes to a certain danger. I know you told me a story about that, Joe, once.
Yes, yes.
So,
Yeah, overall, I'm just I don't really care. Like I said, I don't care too much as long as you ask me in a relatively tasteful manner. Honestly, I don't care too much.
okay, so this is my King Turtle, right? Speaking of cushion-shaped watches, it's 45 mil on paper. Now I'm gonna wear it on my chicken wrist. You know, you have to basically strap it on really tight. You know, just the way I like it, Joe.
Ooh, careful, not too tight.
And it wears okay.
Does that little flap bother you? Doesn't that get to you?
This one?
Yeah.
No. This is also, by the way, this is my gym watch. So a lot of times I strap it on a hoodie. And then that's even less. So, but when I wear it on my naked wrist, this is how it wears like. And it's like a big diver. And you know how much loom these Seikos have. So yeah, it's a very cool watch. I love the vibe of this watch. You know,
I'm pretty sure Dis has this one too, or he did at some point in time.
Yeah. It's nice. Pool, hot tub, ocean, gym. That's my first option. And otherwise, I go into my dusty, musty old Rolex. Yeah. Watch guys know the prices of X watch. Yeah, unfortunately, that's a blessing and a curse. Dirk Diggler says yes, and the flap bothers me. And people think I'm crazy for buying this watch at 500. Hey, I got it at 350 from eBay, but I think there would be people who would find that crazy as well. And for good measure, again, you know, people have different priorities.
I get like I don't know, and it's not their fault, honestly. It isn't. It's an honest and innocent question for the most part. But there's been a few people who figured out that wear Rolex and like, oh wow, those cost a few $100, right? And you just can't help but chuckle about it. Like, you know, I'm like, try a couple thousand. Oh wow, really? I'm like, yeah. And I just leave it like that. Then they start guessing at it, you know. It's like, oh yeah, $1,500. I'm like, oh geez, I wish, you know. Oh, $2,000, you know. And as soon as they hit like the three, you know, then they start to get quiet. Like $3,000? I was like, well, we shouldn't be having this conversation now.
Yeah, look, I mean that then I start getting embarrassed. You see, that's the thing. Maybe it's like, you know, that's why I guess we like keeping the company of other watch people, because they have at least a base understanding of what the value of a certain watch is, and they might or might not appreciate it, right? You know, they might say, oh, you know, that's overpriced for what it is. Oh, you got a good deal or whatever else. But
Right. Well, yeah. It depends on the setting though. Like, so like I got no problem telling like, yeah, okay, it's extremely shallow of me, but you know, what do you expect from a guy like myself? Um, I'm like the Ric Flair, you know. I walk into a bar, you know, wearing crocodile shoes, a $15,000 Rolex. You know, I've got no problem swinging that dick, you know, around. You know, tossing that money around. But embarrassing enough, I showed up at the church, and it's very rare that I ever show up to church. Just for the record, you know why? Because my hooves, they're too loud on the floor. The pews are very unaccommodating for my tail. It gets too hot in there. You know, even on negative 25 degrees, it gets fairly warm in a church for me. Beside the point. they were having like a picnic at this event, and I was invited. I'm like, ah, screw it, it's kind of the weird things of
Okay, so
or unfortunate things.
they had to get the church out of the church for you to be able to enter the church.
Essentially, yes. And funny enough, I live right next to a church, so I pretty much had to show up. It really wasn't much of a, join us type thing. Like, like they hit me up like, oh yeah, you're like you're living right next to a church now, right? I'm like, yeah. Oh, this event's happening. We expect you to see there. Like, I'm like, shit. I can't say that I'm not gonna be there because they can see me on my yard essentially. Anyway, fast forward. I'm wearing the Milgauss, the Z Blue Milgauss. This is before I got it dinged up, right? And of course, it's got the new polish on it. That blue dial is just absolutely magnificent. And we're sitting outside and we're having a conversation. And this older gentleman, he's probably in his 40s, mid 40s.
Mm-hmm.
He looks over at me. He's like, man, he said, I've been staring at the watch all day, man. He said, it's pretty shiny. And this guy's got a Casio on, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the F91Ws. And he had taken it off because it was warm that day. And he's like, man, he's like, aren't you hot in it? He said, looks like, said, looks very shiny and whatnot, but it's probably, getting warm. And I said, it's a little warm. He said, what kind of brand is it? I said, it's a Swiss brand. Oh, Swiss. He said, those are very expensive, right? I said, they can be. I'm trying to keep it low because I'm in church, right? So I'm trying to keep it. And this girl right next to me, she knew what it was, and she's like, "Oh, it's a Rolex." And of course, there's like 8 people here, and of like all the people at this church event, it's the most 8 conservative people that I'm sitting with at this point in time. And everyone stops eating their food and puts on their drinks and gives me this look, So I'm like,
Right.
fuck,
Wait, just because someone said Rolex.
I'm like, I gotta run with them. Like, yep, that's indeed, that's what it is. And of course, immediately we jump into the conversation. Oh man, those are a few $100, right? I'm like, well, I mean, they used to be at one point, but yeah, we can leave it at that.
In
a couple
1967, yeah.
And and she's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure those watches go for like a few $1,000s, right? I'm like, they can? Well, how much did it cost, really? I'm like, well, it took me a while to save up for it. I sold some stock, We had to sell stock to get it? I'm like, fuck. So I keep digging myself into this hole even more and more. And then, of course, everyone starts the number game, 3,000, 10,000, 5,000. I'm like, no, guys. Of course, they're saying it out loud, and then like the table right across from us and starting to notice this, right? So I'm like, all right.
See, Jimmy has a good suggestion. Big Joe, you should have given the Rolex in the tithing basket.
And then I'm like, all right, so like just to keep him quiet, I said $9,000. He said $9,000. That costs more than my car. And he's like, that costs more than my wife's wedding ring. At this point, I'm like, all right, yeah, I should really get going here, But it's
here's the thing, Joe. I mean, look, I understand. I prefer to be private about it. I try not to get into these conversations. Sometimes it's inescapable, but I feel at times it's like that guy who went to Harvard, and when you ask him, oh, so where'd you go to college? And he says something like, oh, I went to school in Boston, right? And he doesn't say that he went to Harvard unless you really press it. And I feel like part of that fake humility is very icky to me.
right.
I would rather be done with it. So when I do get into those discussions, I just spout it off as soon as I can rather than dodging it, because it makes, like you said, at every step the conversation becomes more awkward and unbearable. And you don't know whether you are trying to be humble or in fact you are giving people a harder time.
Right.
If you can't avoid the conversation by simply saying too much, and well, I regret the decision every day or something like that. I really shouldn't put this much money in the watches, but this is what I paid. I think the conversation becomes more of a burden, actually. I think it's better sometimes to just put it out there and move on with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. But on the other end of the spectrum, I was at the gentleman's club and I was at the bar waiting for my drink.
Right.
And this worker comes up, so to speak, and she immediately starts fondling the watch. She starts touching the Rolex. And, she picks
Was
up.
she arranging it for your wrist? By
Yeah,
any
yeah.
chance?
She was, moving around. She said, nice Rolex. And I said, no, it's an Omega. And she said, nah, no. She said, I've been around enough guys to know what this is. And it's just like, at that point, you got to say, yeah. I mean, you're caught. What do you do? What do you do?
You
Other than
can't
keep
say
a close eye on it.
I don't remember which one of our friends it was in the audience, but someone said, anything more than 3K is a sugar daddy watch, and I think that's actually an interesting but very correct way of putting it. Like, if people know how to recognize it, and you're wearing a watch that costs more than 3K, so if you're wearing, a Tudor, uh, even IWC, Omega, before even coming to Rolex or anything more expensive, people like your friend in the gentleman's club, if they know how to recognize it, they identify you just like that, for better or worse.
I think it's more interesting to, I give a little bit more respect to the girls who can actually get like the oddball brands, like Tudor. Like I've had
Ah,
my JLC recognized a couple
it
of times.
was it was it was full on John who was talking about the concept of sugar daddy watches, just to give him credit. Thank you, full on. Yeah, thank you, John.
But no, I give them more credit because that means they have had at some point had to sit down and do a little research, because Rolex is easy, Paddock is easy now,
Right.
Omega's pretty easy nowadays. But for the people who can figure it out, like it's the
And I
Tudors,
mean,
an
a lot of
IWC, it's a Vacheron, it's I
a lot
think
of a
that's a
lot
little
of
bit more credible.
a lot of rappers have been talking about Audemars Piguet as well since late 90s. So I think those, like, the big four plus Omega, it's pretty out there. And even, like, again, if you're working in a gentleman's club, I'm sure you would know what a Breitling is and what an IWC is as well. So
Absolutely.
and yeah, look, I told you this story just a couple of days ago behind the scenes, Mitch. I had this was maybe almost a decade ago by now, but I had a girlfriend who discovered my watch collection one day, and it took her like 2 days to drop me after that. Which is stupid.
What like did she realize like you're gonna make her split like half the bill?
No, no,
Money was gonna be
that
pretty
that
tight.
but that's the thing. She was stupid because if she played her cards right, that is actually the kind of guy you can squeeze for money. Um,
Oh, 100%.
because
They
you
got
see,
enough money to like put it on watches. They got enough money to like spend it on stupid
that,
shit.
that that's it.
I can
That's
detest.
exactly it. That's exactly it. It's like, here's someone who basically wastes all this money all these luxury items. But I think her logic was that a man should be completely austere and spend all his money on his woman. And I guess, like, I'm not
It's
gonna do that.
weird to say, but I appreciate those women who actually like openly say it though. Like they don't play the fucking games. They openly say it. Like I had one woman, like okay, she met me outside the club and we got to talking, and she said like, oh, she's like, if you're gonna get with me, I expect you to spend all your money on me. Like I expect you to be lavished on the weekends, $500 minimum shopping trips. You know, so I'm like, well, I mean, we're probably not going to get along, to be frank with you. But at least you're honest and upfront about it. I'll give you a little credibility where credit is due, rather than,
Yep.
be kind of led on for the game.
Um, Jimmy says, "Was that your test watch box, Lord?" And I said, "It was my decoy briefcase." Ah, yeah. And Jimmy says, "Only Joe could go from church to the gentleman's club."
Quite literally in some cases.
Yeah, what I mean, come on. Dirk says, Joe, they are going to look at you funny when the money basket comes around and you only drop $5.
Oh, that's actually happened a couple times. Because I dressed up in a suit. Like people know I wear Rolexes now. Like it's kind of out in the open that I'm a watch enthusiast. So that yeah, when I drop like a $10, a $5, I do kind of feel guilty about it. Um, but every now and then I make a huge contribution, mostly to avoid paying taxes. But it's got to come for something, right?
Well, honestly, I'm that's one of the things I do like about this country. I would rather give to give to whatever your temple is or a charity than to the government. So if it helps you to write it off, it better go to a church, to your temple, to your mosque, to whatever else you believe in, to the children's cancer hospital, than the fucking government. So more
I
power
always
to
like
that.
to the best thing is my preacher's like a pretty laid back guy. He's like a real cool guy. Like I said, he used to party back in the day until he found God. But he's a bit quirky, in a good way. In a good way. That's what makes him such a beloved preacher. And every time I give him like a donation check, I'm like, all right, here you go, sir. Buy the wife something nice, and here's the down payment of the new caddy. And he just laughs and smiles. He's like, oh, I wonder if I'll be able to buy the premium package this time around.
Look, I mean,
Uh,
the in the US, a lot of the preachers do make.
I mean, they're like Peter Popoff. You know who Peter Popoff is?
Yes, I
Okay,
mean,
that's
the
enough
the,
said
the
right there.
ones, yeah, the ones who lead the mega churches. Look, I mean, look, a local pastor is not in the same league as those, and I'm sure they're doing honorable, honest work for the most part. But there are some interesting examples. There was a whole case of rabbis defrauding their communities just a few years back in Brooklyn. So
I
it
remember
happens. It
hearing
happens
an
everywhere.
interesting quote. Or yeah, it was an interesting quote. So there was these guys behind me. I was having lunch, and they must have been part of an insurance outfit or something like that. They were talking amongst themselves, and they said the best sales reps aren't guys in mega firms. They're not on the used car lots. They're not in banks. They said they were in robes and in front of about 15, 20 people preaching about the Lord. Because he said anybody who can go out there and spew those kind of lies and convince people that some magical man in the cloud loves them is the type of sales rep that you do not mess with. And I thought that was quite interesting.
Well, I would, again, as a believer, I would disagree on the lies part. But hey, any kind of salesman, if we are talking about especially retail of any sort, you actually have, no matter how overpriced it is, no matter how out of proportion it is with the material value that that good holds, you're still giving your customer something tangible, something they can hold in their hands, something that they can integrate into their lives, in a
Right.
less, more or less meaningful way, something that they can use perhaps even on a daily basis. Whereas if you are a man of cloth or a woman of cloth, you are essentially selling people something that they can't see. right?
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're taking religion
except,
aside, I think that's a very
except through
interesting quote.
except through the effects in their lives. So it's a much more difficult job for sure, for
Mhm.
sure. Eddie Fu says, "Is Oris super soft at gray market?"
Yes,
I think
in general, yes.
it's softer. Yeah, it's. I'm not sure if it's super soft, but let's check a model. For example, Pro Pilot X, right? People go crazy about them. Let's see.
No, go for the Aquas. Go for the Aquas because that's the most common thing I see on the Facebook
That's true.
platforms.
Let's do that because that's also a more time honored model. It's not as new. It has existed for quite a while. So let's double check first. First, the retail price.
I believe they're like $3,400, depending if you get like 39 or 40.
So let's see. Share screen. Let's start with Oris's own catalog. So there we have it. Oris Aquas 41.50. That's 3,500 on a full steel bracelet. 3,300 on the rubber.
The blue and the black would be the most common. I know the greens do hold a bit of a premium for what it counts for Oris as far as premium.
Yeah, so let's check that out. Basically, 3,500 on the full steel retail and 3,300 on the rubber.
Rubber.
These are quite old. Let's see the recent models at least.
I can't tell you how many times I've really gotten close to buying an Oris to the point where like I had everything in the shopping cart, was ready to place the order the next day, and I just never did it.
Yeah, I think they're pretty soft.
I mean, I know you can get them for like around $2,000, 2,500, pretty easily, depending on what the what it's on, what the configuration is.
I
The
think you can
39s
even,
go for a lot of money. Oh, not a lot of money, but they hold a premium for the 39s.
yeah, well, let's see. I will choose a more recent. Yeah, let's see. From the last 3 years and case size, we will. What will we do?
By the way, I seen an interesting Facebook post. Someone is downgrading, trying to get rid of the Speedmaster. I believe it's the Heaslite version. He was willing to trade for a Tudor Black Bay 36 and a Oris Diver 56 two-tone in bronze.
Hey man, you're basically, Eddie. You're talking about basically at 50% off. So if you are buying at retail, ask for a hefty discount. I'll guess 2K on. Yeah, you can find it cheaper than 2K, but yeah, let's say 2K for something that retails at 3,500. So, and that's usually the problem. The problem is not necessarily quality, right? Aussie Expat has kind of a nightmare story, but they're dime a dozen. They can be easily found, so that doesn't really help it retain value. They're mass produced and not exclusive in any way. So,
As Archie
as
would say, they're nothing launched. There's nothing special about them. They're sold every 3 minutes.
Ozzy says, my neighbor told me how an Indus fell off the dial of his Oris and got stuck on their hand. Oof. Eddie Fu says, Big Meech, you said you almost bought an Oris and you were shiting on Grand Seiko.
To be fair, though, I mean, I actually had a Grand Seiko, so most of what I said was valid.
Guys, just so you know, most of Joe's jokes are self-deprecating and self-hating. So don't get offended. I think Joe,
Oh.
I haven't seen someone as self-critical as Joe in a long while. Like the way you were talking about your date just purchased just on this stream 2 days ago. That was something.
All right, so yeah, Lolix was actually he hit me up. He's like, be honest. He's like, be straightforward. He's like, is the Oyster Perpetual a fake Rolex? Is it not a real Rolex? And here's what I told him. I said, look, if you do not have a hot steel sports model, if you don't have a Submariner, a GMT, or whatever, the date just is not enough. It it's like it's the appetizer, but it's not the full course meal. But I said, if Lolix in your case, like you got, the two-tone Submariner, you got he's got the Wasp, right? He's got the no date sub. He's got a Speedmaster. I said, look, a date just is actually fine for you because it balances out the collection. I mean, the date just is just a fun, beat it up watch. There's nothing valuable about them because they're easy to get. That's and they're fairly affordable when you're not like me and you don't fucking overpay for the damn thing. But no, they're fairly affordable and they make for great. They're better as a duo. That's what I'm trying to say. They're not a great flex piece. They're not like, oh, I can flex on anyone else because I've got a date just. No, you want to do that, you buy a sub. Then you can that's the license to be a douchebag.
Dirk Bigler says, next time you go to church, wear the Oris. And Jimmy says, I don't get that logic. The OP Oyster Perpetual is the classic Rolex, no question in my book. Hey, before the hype colors, no one paid any attention to it, and that was a good thing because that was a nice entry point for many to the Rolex game. And I think it's for someone who is drawn into the brand. It can be a great starter watch, or it can be a one and done. As Aussie Expat says, date just is enough for most. And so is Oyster Perpetual, by the way. And yes, see that overused phrase that I just used, Jimmy says, date just is a great one and done, to use that overused phrase.
Yeah, date just is a great, like I said, it's a great appetizer, but it's not, you're always going to be unfulfilled.
Classic Rolex needs a Cyclops. Absolute and utter nonsense. I have the most classical Rolex there is in my 5513. It doesn't have a Cyclops, nor does it have that unnecessary date indicator. Anyway, I mean, Cyclops is great. It's iconic. When there's the date function, it needs to be there. But the date function itself it's not always necessary.
Well, I mean, look at the Sea Dweller. What is it? The pre-ceramic, right? When they didn't have the Cyclops on it. Most highly sought after and desirable to this day over a standard Sea Dweller, somewhat argued, because it doesn't have that Cyclops.
They didn't have, even after ceramic, they didn't have a Cyclops on the Sea Dweller up until year 2017, up until SD43 came out.
Yeah, and Tudor does theirs with their 41s, no Cyclops, and people love them. People love them.
Look, I think again, once the sapphire crystal has been introduced to the Sea Dweller, I think it's and now the technology allows you, it became harder and harder to justify it just as a relic of the past, to say, well, the Cyclops doesn't belong there, right? So I understand that. With Rolex, when you have a date on the dial, you kind of need a Cyclops at this point in time. But Sea Dwellers didn't have it because they had this beautifully domed crystals at the time that were specifically designed and secured not to pop off under those extenuating circumstances. and it was just impossible for Rolex, using their own technology of fitting a Cyclops over that domed plastic crystal. Once they went to mostly flat sapphire crystals, I think it just made sense, but it took them still some time to introduce it up until the 50th anniversary, 2017. Exactly. No Cyclops equals unusual. Hey, it's I would say platonic ideal, but all respect to your choice of words. My next Rolex I'm going to try and get is the Milgauss. Dirk Diggler says, I think Milgauss is a beautiful watch. I prefer it in the blue, but
It's heavy. It's heavy.
anyway. It does seem that the no dates are the more coveted Rolex now.
Absolutely, especially in the 40 mils. If you actually want to talk Submariners, I looked at Submariner prices, and I looked at the 20. Or no, I seen one for 2018 40 mil, no date sub, and I bought mine for close to around 12 grand.
And how much are you selling yours now for Joe, as you're trying to push it on the audience?
Well, I mean, they're going for 14 grand right now. So on average, they're going for 14K. So I find that interesting. And I think the 40 mils are suffering the same problem as like the previous gen big box Speedmasters, right? Everyone wants them right now because they're easier to get. So I think the 40 mil subs are going to be not harder to get, but to see them jump up in price when the rest of them are coming back down. And you're going to hit like a very interesting price point between the 40 and 41.
Aussie Expat says, I actually agree with this statement, by the way. I was just expressing my personal taste. Non-Cyclops Rolex are lovable, but it's one of those things. Bezels and Cyclops equals classic Rolex. Yes. I don't hold,
Yeah.
because look, when we were having the discussion, especially the original OC and I were having the discussion, you know, is Datejust more iconic or the Submariner? I was saying, you got to be out of your mind to make this argument against the Submariner. But look,
They just more valuable, more
between
iconic.
let's say 16610 and the 5513, show someone who might have the brand recognition, the two pictures, they might even think that 5513 missing the date function and the Cyclops is a fake Rolex, is the Folex, as
Yeah, very true.
So I completely understand. I think the classic Rolex look does, in a way, ask for the Cyclops, for sure. It's more recognizable. How quickly you think I could get one from AD without a buying history from them? Not quickly at all, I don't think. I think
Nowadays,
the
it depends.
Z Blue, the Z Blue,
Actually, I think it depends. I think it really depends. Now, if you wanted a Milgauss, I'm pretty sure you could get a black dial within a couple of weeks, honestly.
a couple of
But a Z
weeks.
Blue, yeah. But a Z Blue, I feel like if you were patient enough, you could possibly get one at the end of the year.
With all due respect, I feel both are a little unrealistic with those timelines. But I am agreeing that the black dial is probably easier to get, but the blue, I don't know, man. I think steel sports models are still steel professional Rolex. I think they're still pretty difficult to get as a first purchase. He says with a buying history. Yeah, well, I mean, depends on what your buying history is. You might be able to get blue. Yeah.
How many tutors did you buy this year? That's the real question.
I already bought my Datejust 41 from them. Yeah, I think maybe you can get a Z Blue before the end of the year. You should ask. I mean, ask as soon as you can.
Now would be the time to do, yeah.
Now really is the time to do it because they have more watches. They do. They generally do. They always have something in the vault for sure. But nowadays they have more. Eddie Fu says two-tone yellow gold Daytona with black dial for me is the perfect one and done. I actually love that watch. Let's pull it up. Aussie Expat says Milgauss shouldn't be a problem even without buying history. It is barely above the Datejust. Nice, DJ Dirk. That is a classic. Hey, I think so too, but Joe just wants to beat himself up for no reason whatsoever. Dirk Diggler says, I'm not a baller like Joe or you. Well, I'm not a baller like Joe either.
I'm in massive credit card debt. I mean, the collectors are starting to call my house now at this point. So, just throwing that out there.
Difficulty only starts with the Explorer. Milgauss and Air King are gettable. Both, but now with the new Air King, only Milgauss is gettabler sports.
I'd agree with that. Yeah. The new Air Kings are starting to flip pretty hard right now. 15, 16 grand.
Yeah, the new Air King, I think, it is going to be very hard to get for a while, and then the older ones, of course, are going to, at least for a little bit, go crazy in the secondary market. So this is really not the time to get an Air King.
What do you think, Lord? What do you think would be more easier to get? The left-hand drive, because I see a lot of them popping up on Facebook of people getting them from VIP events, or the Air King.
Oh, I think that if you have any sort of pull to be invited to an event like that from your AD, I think you'll have a better chance getting the Air King anyways. But whichever one you want at that point, if they're giving you a model, you probably get your pick. No,
no clue.
You don't think so?
No clue.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming. There we go. I pulled it up. Yeah, this is a cool watch, man. I actually like it a little more with the diamonds there, with the small flawless diamonds, just like that. But as it is too, it's pretty cool. I also like the fact that the outer rings of the subdials are distinguished in the diamond dial version 2. I think that to me makes it a little more visually interesting, more than the gem setting per se. But this is a great watch, and a nice contrast too with the black dial against the gold. Joe, just sell some land. I think the Air King is fugly. Dirk Diggler says. Aussie Expat says, I agree, no clue. Two-tone Daytona is possible with small purchase history. I think so. I think two-tone Daytona is extremely possible. And any two-tone, I think, is possible. Eddie Fu, Air King versus IWC Big Pilots. Hey, I mean, if you're actually into aviation history, I think, and you don't mind how big the Big Pilot really is, I think it's a no-brainer. Of course, IWC. If you're talking about value retention, of course, Air King. But if you are if you're actually into flying planes, I think IWC Big Pilot by a country mile. And Aussie Expat says any two-tone is possible with no purchase history. I can attest to that. I can attest to that. But yeah, Eddie, I actually look, again, I really can't stand the sight of their new CEO, and sometimes wonder if if only they kept Josh Kern and not let him go to Breitling. I don't know whose decision that was. I don't know if he insisted to leave, because at some point the current CEO of Breitling was the CEO of IWC. So I always wonder what would have happened if he stayed with IWC. But I kind of look, some might consider it gimmicky, but all these, different ceramic cases they do, the kind of stuff they do with their alloy of ceramic and titanium, ceratanium, they do. I kind of appreciate it, honestly. Um, Obviously, as with any unique case material, it comes with a premium and sometimes an unreasonable premium, as is the case with the black dial ceratanium one. Let me show you that. But otherwise, it's a very cool watch.
Long lugs.
Yeah. I mean, this is the 41 mil, but still, it's a big watch. It wears big. It has quite a presence. But this all black aesthetic is quite cool as well. Even the sapphire glass is tinted a little bit in the back, so it kind of preserves that aesthetic even in the exhibition case back. But then again, yeah, it has like it comes with like a $6,000 premium, almost twice the price of the steel one, right? So yeah, and of course they pulled the whole limited availability nonsense as well. So there's that. Dirk Diggler says, did I mention how much IWC paid for product placement in the new Top Gun movie? Please do mention. Yes, because they do have their association already with Top Gun, the academy, so to speak. But I'm sure they have something going on with the new movie as well. Eddie Fu says, agree. I love IWC. IWC Portuguese or Portuguese for me is the most underrated dress watch on the gray market. Man, IWC with an in-house movement, it's a decent watch. I think they get a bad rep, but hey, it's not Rolex, as we like to say.
I mean, honestly, if they would do a lot more in-house stuff, I think the price would be more justifiable. But when you're charging 5-6 grand for ETA, I don't know, it's a bit of a tough pill to swallow, maybe.
I mean, look, they haven't invented it from the scratch. This is an in-house movement, but it does preserve the larger architecture of the Valjoux 7750 they used to use in these watches. But it has the addition of column wheel, which is cool for a chronograph. And it's now entirely manufactured in-house, which is also cool. But hey, pay attention to what you're getting. If you're getting an IWC with an in-house caliber, it's quite decent. With the ETA at retail, it's overpriced. It is what it is. I love the Mojave desert ceramic they have that has a very cool like desert gear kind of look. It's just a cool
Yeah, I
shtick,
love
man.
these.
And yes, there are aspects to it that are a little gimmicky, color created by Pantone and stuff like that. But hey, it is something original. It is something new. They do have a history of having dabbled and experimented with ceramic as a case material. And frankly, if they did this in the 41 chronograph, pardon me, it would be a no-brainer for me, honestly.
A lot of people would buy them.
Because it's unique. Again, let me read some of these chats. Not enough money from IWC to get their watch on the stars. And I saw real Top Gunners in a video today, G-Shock and Garmin Phoenix. What about a Black Explorer 2, Aussie? AD has a display one, and I really liked it. The gray market isn't that much more than retail. Was wondering if it's worth the wait. You might not have to wait that long for a Black Dial Explorer, honestly, Corrado. I think you should just ask. Else says, what do you think of the Longine Spirit versus similar IWC?
IWC without even looking at it.
At that price point, actually, I would go with Longine. If you're looking for a dress watch, Longine Spirit series is great. If you're looking for any entry-level dress watch, I would go with Longine. If you don't mind the 5-star configuration, the new Zulu Time is a great execution of a GMT. So why not? Aussie Expat says Explorer 2, even black. I think it's a little tough. I've been asking for an Explorer 2 Polar for 6 months now. Now been waiting longer than my Daytona. Birdcase says there's a scene in the movie where an admiral is timing the mission with an IWC stopwatch. Cool.
That is true.
Corrado says, I may wait a little and see what happens. Yeah, if it's not a priority, take your time, man. Big Meech, have you owned any of the Holy Trinity?
No, I'm actually kind of not scared, but concerned of actually owning one.
I mean, the way you wear your watches, I think you might be justified in that concern.
No, take wear out of no, I mean, obviously, so, yeah, I wear my watches rougher than usual, let's be frank.
Yeah.
But the watches that I do take seriously, like my Yachtmaster, the Cartier, and the JLC, they don't get out of the box until the weekend, honestly. My Yachtmaster, I'm starting to feel guilty on because that thing barely sees wrist time at this point. But we run into the sides, like, okay, so, yes, this date shutter, this date just actually is way too big for my wrist. But on paper, it's only a $9,000 watch on paper. I can live with that watch being too big on my wrist because it's under 10 grand, and I'm not trying to, again, be ignorant towards price. But when you talk about throwing down 22 grand for a Vacheron overseas, and it's too big on me, I'm going to get irritated because that's a lot of money just for a watch to not fit properly. You talk about getting, let's just say, an AP Royal Oak, a jumbo, that would be like a 42 mil for me. And that's going to be like 30 grand. I didn't know what it retail, but odds are you'd have to pay over retail for it. So yeah, that would piss me off that a watch isn't fitting me properly.
Wait, for a Royal Oak Jumbo?
Yeah.
Oh,
Blue dial.
You're not getting anything less than 100,000.
Either way, it would still piss me off if it doesn't fit me to a T. And then of course Paddock, yes. I mean, Paddock is easy to get if you're looking for a dress watch. 90% of the times you can walk into a Paddock boutique and get a Calatrava. That's great and all, but my JLC...
That's not true anymore, but in the secondary market, you can find them pretty easily.
Oh, no, I mean, I walked up to Wixon's Jewelers a couple months ago, and they had two Calatravas sitting there, brand new.
Right, but you said it like anytime you go to a Patek boutique. In Southern California, most of them have completely empty cases, and there's never, ever a watch on display. And you can't buy even a Calatrava without purchase history. At this point, you can't even buy a woman's Patek from some Patek dealers with no purchase
Interesting.
history. It's gone crazy complete because
See, it's always been opposite
people
here,
see
though.
it as a way of establishing purchase history. So in Southern California, it's very difficult to walk into a Patek dealer.
Well, either way, though, I mean, I digress. I wouldn't wear a Paddock dress watch enough to be able to justify its price.
Aussie Expat says, "Fike the Holy Trinity. I'm a Toyota guy. I like stuff that survives." And of course, we're talking about Vacheron Constantin, Audemars Piguet, and Patek Philippe. 1016 Explorer on Connolly, going back to the Top Gun. Tom Cruise wore a Porsche design Orfina chronograph in both movies.
Yep.
Guys, we have about an hour more to go, but if you have been enjoying the show and if you have been learning from it, please hit that like button, upvote the stream. If you have not subscribed yet, please do that. It helps me a great deal. And while you're at it, click that bell icon too. Spread the word, share the link on other platforms. It helps a lot. Until I reach 1,000 subscribers, though, and until I get monetized, if you want to help this channel to become more self-sustaining, if you want to encourage the work I do here, feel free to also consider a PayPal contribution at lordhellespontv@gmail.com, lordhellespontv@gmail.com. I also have a Cash App, $LHVVV, $LHVVV. Aussie Expat says, I think Patek is softening. Not by much. I think the really high price Aquanauts are more possible now. They are soft, man. And not really. Not really. I mean, what are you talking about? 5167A is it at all close to retail price, Aussie? That's softening to me. Not going down from 2.5x to maybe 2x. You know, that's barely a small correction. Big Meech, what Cartier do you have? Didn't know you like fashion watches.
Ultimate luxury is Cartier, all right? I mean, you think dress watch, you don't think these garbage brands like Paddock and JLC, a bunch of poser brands. You get Cartier. Yes, I am tired, actually. I was up at like 5:30 this morning, so I'm running off of fumes here. By the way, Lord, or anybody in the chat, does anybody know if it's normal for a Datejust to change its hour markers or change the date 7 minutes past midnight? Because it's I noticed this last night. It knocked over 7 minutes after midnight. It's weird because my Yachtmaster knocks over 2 minutes before midnight. So I wonder if it's just a model thing or what.
Take it back, Burke says.
Fucking hell, I could send this off for warranty. Still under warranty, so.
Hey, in 2019, Aussie Expat, any Patek was possible except for Grand Complications and the sports models. And even the sports models you could get in a wait list that would take you years for the Aquanaut at least, but you would still get it. I mean, AC Morgan just got it in that way. I think he got on a wait list in 2019 or 2020, and he had just received his Aquanaut like 2 months ago. So it happens. Jimmy says it's a fakeroonie.
I've been outed.
And Corrado Galizia says, I love the sound when it clicks over the dates.
Yeah, I just heard it pop over. Yeah, 7 minutes past midnight. Fucking crazy. Maybe if I let it die and then rewind it, maybe that'll help.
I don't know. Well, Aussie Expat says, don't you have a date Rolex? He does, but he says it happens in a more timely manner in his Yachtmaster than a Datejust. I have not owned a modern Datejust, so I can't tell you.
Yachtmaster is more luxurious. It's more more well made.
It's possible. Aussie Expat says it's just how the hands were installed. Don't worry about it.
I'm gonna send it off to service.
Don't send it
Hey,
off.
may as well, right? I should actually send it off to service. Because it's got 1 more year left of warranty. Just send it off for service. Get that free service checkup on it.
Okay. Well, I mean that's a possibility. Yes.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be now. It'd be towards the closer towards the end of the year. I mean, saving $750 right there.
Why not? I thought Aussie Expat was coming in to show the Batgirl. What happened about that?
Oh, it's in the safe, Laura. Did you hear? It's in the safe.
It is. I thought he was waiting for a special occasion to bring it out. I mean, not to bring it out, but really to get it out, get it sized
But
properly, and wear.
You don't get it. You don't understand. It's in the safe somewhere.
No. Aussie don't play like that. Aussie don't play like that. Aussie doesn't give watches away to his mistresses. Aussie doesn't put it in the safe forever. It is in the safe. And he says, no, I haven't sized it. Yeah, because, well, you are just giving more cannon fodder to Joe at this point. What will you say?
He doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. Why would he talk about it if he doesn't have it?
What will you say? You'll say next, like, I have it still fully stickered or something. You are
still got the hang tag on it.
You're giving more ammunition to Joe. You are giving more
still
ammunition.
In the fucking box. It's still in the plastic coffin.
So what do you think about, since we talked about Oris before, what do you think about their ProPilot X's?
Bring that up again. I'm familiar with what it is. I need to remember or physically see what it is. All right, so these, yeah. I believe I brought these up on Timmy's stream. It was either Timmy's stream or your stream, and somebody immediately said, no, these are garbage. They're garbage because they're fucking overpriced as hell. And yes, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Fuck me dead.
Yeah.
Look, for $2,200, yeah, I'd dig it. I mean, it's an ETA movement, I believe. I could be wrong. On that. If we're not talking price, all right, let's fuck the price. If we're not talking price,
just so we don't move to somewhere wrong. It's their in-house caliber 400 in these, but yes, beyond that, go on.
All right. Well, then it's just a conversation we will visit back to. But if we're not talking officially priced, I like the designs. I do. I hear the bracelet's phenomenal on them. They're a little bit chunky, but I think they're fun watch to look at. And I remember when I first seen them, I'm like, oh shit, I might buy one of these because it has a date complication on it. And I was considering about buying the salmon dial, if you will, because quite frankly, on my skin tone, let's be honest, I can pop off with a salmon dial. But other than that, I do not like, if I remember right, these are butterfly style clasps, if I remember correctly.
I can see you rocking this in the gentleman's club.
Actually, it would be very flamboyant, wouldn't it? So it's a fun looking watch. It's very summer like. I think they're really cool, but the price just ruins it for me. I think Archie's 100% right. Oris is getting way too big for his pants, essentially.
Yeah,
and they're trying to swing towards that Tudor Omega category when they have no business being in that category.
Look, I mean, let me count the positives, right? So it's a good piece of design. I think, again, I'm biased, but I will give in. The date doesn't bother me as much being at 6 o'clock, right? I would I would say get rid of the date, but again, at 6 o'clock, it actually flows with the design. It's not so bad. Um, the, all the colors are pretty interesting. I think even the gray monochrome version of it is fine, but I do think it's either the salmon or the blue that's hotter. Um, it's all in titanium, mounted on a titanium bracelet. It has their in-house caliber, 5 days power reserve, very respectable. I think, what does Oris have? 10 years of warranty. That's also beautiful. It's a good perk. A lot of the luxury brands just started moving up to 5 to 8 years. 10 outdoes them all. Um, but $4,300 for an Oris, for me, it's hard to justify. You really have to fall in love with this watch, and even then, ask for a discount, haggle. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is a cool watch. I do like the blue a little better, but the only thing that bothers me on the blue is why they didn't go with a date disc that kind of matches the color of the dial. I would have appreciated that.
It suffers the same problem that the new Omega Aquaterras suffer, and that is not having a matching date wheel disc, like you
Right.
said. And you would think it's like you would think something like that is so minor and minuscule, like it shouldn't matter. But you add that in there, and you get a whole new watch. It's a completely different look.
Yeah. I think, like, look on the this watch kind of has the monochrome feel, and the black at least matches with the indexes and the lume plots on the hands. So this is not so bad when you look at it. But on the blue and salmon, I think they should have gone with matching background on the date discs. Yeah, I mean, I think the proportions are quite great too. It's 39 millimeter. So for people like you and me, Joe, this could be a very nicely proportioned, nicely sized watch.
Depends on if the lugs drop down.
Your TV dinner is ready, I think, Joe. Don't miss it. Go get it. Um,
Lord, I'll be right back. I'm gonna get my TV dinner.
Aussie Expat says it's been worn, sized for my wife. Aussie Expat says I like it, would not buy for the Pro Pilot X. Better value than the new Aquaterras, maybe. And Jimmy says, well, it's in house and titanium. Yeah, all the positives that I talk about, I think, make it a nice proposition. Is it a value proposition? I'm not sure. Powered by McDonald's. Beautiful.
This is a sad looking burger, if I'm being honest. It's quite depressing.
It really is. It really, especially for someone who actually lives on a farm. If you're gonna eat meat,
You know what? Yeah, like I told you, like like McDonald's burgers are, right? They're like dairy cows, and dairy cows, no offense, are like literally the lowest form of meat you can buy from a cow. Like there's nothing there. That's why it's so just undesirable. You'll never see it in a bistro, so to speak, except if it's a Jersey. Jersey's different.
yeah. Let's see if there's a look of the clasp. Um, yeah, the clasp doesn't look that great, Bosser. You're right, but otherwise, this watch looks pretty cool.
Is it twin deployant or is it what is it? Oh, fuck me dead.
It's a very strange look on the clasp. Honestly, I haven't noticed it, and it doesn't have a picture here of the open.
And I guarantee you, you're not getting a quick adjust on this for the price.
You mean like an easy
Like a
change?
pull-out link. Yeah, or
No,
something like that.
no, I don't think so. No, there's nothing of that. So, oh yeah, yeah, it's like this. So single fold
Hmm.
clasp, not butterfly. But yeah, this kind of
Oh,
looks.
Ozzy's here.
Oh, he is. Hey,
G'day.
hey,
Hey
man.
guys.
How are
Yeah,
you?
the nice pilot seatbelt buckle.
Yeah, I think they went for that, but I think everything else being such a streamlined, harmonious piece of design that pops out in like a sore thumb, honestly.
It's okay. It would otherwise. It's a boring watch ultimately. I mean, it's very unobnoxious, right, for the most part. So it's okay to
Is
have
it?
a little bit of flair. I think so. I mean, it's got pretty flat-looking links, and then there's a little bit of industrial design flair to it, but ultimately,
Yeah.
in it once you start going lower and lower in terms of price, you start encountering people really wanting something that really clicks with them. So you need to be more and more unique. Like you'll notice like Tag, like their entire line is just wild. And there's so many because they're trying to appeal to a person who wants a watch that's their concept in their mind. They want something that's close to that. And so you kind of need, at the lower price points, you're not dictating design really. That's what I notice. Like you look at Seiko and Tag and Citizen, it's just an unbelievable amount of watches.
That's true. I mean it's an interesting perspective that I didn't really consider. So
So if you say this is like a pilot watch, it really has to sort of crank that up a little bit, sort of like how the Jeep Patriot does it, where the interior is designed to look like you could wash it out with a high pressure cleaner or something. Meech, would it break your heart to see the Batgirl? I don't have to show it. It's up to you.
You don't got it, man. You don't got it. It's okay, man.
all
It's
right.
okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Would it satisfy you more if I didn't?
Jimmy says, Fike, now I want a Big Mac and fries. Keep eating. Mickey D's, Joe. Pump that MCD.
Oh,
Beautiful.
Look at that mirror finish.
wait, why the fuck do you have it on that? That's not a watch cushion. What do you have it on? It's like
It's just like a cheap travel case. Like I took it
fuck
out
me,
of
Dad.
like,
Put it in a proper cushion.
I don't have proper cushions. I only have garbage. I don't spend money on friggin' what to put my watches in.
You're gonna scratch the links.
I'll be right back.
No, this is the inside of them maybe.
Yeah, still.
This has been worn. This is not an unworn watch. It's just not
These are
sized for me, so
luxury
I can't put it on.
timepieces, good sir. Luxury timepieces, not some Seiko.
Yeah. This is my favorite GMT by far. And I like it on the I understand why people prefer it on the Oyster. I just think that in a collection that I've got almost all Oyster bracelets, the one watch that can have the Jubilee, I better have it. Offers
It
some
just
difference.
looks better. I mean, Rolex keeps shitting on it, saying it's like a sub-average watch, and who knows? Maybe he's right, maybe he's not. But
No,
he's
I
like,
think
yeah, he's like, once you get it, he said, like, you want to sell it. He said it's very boring. He said it's not worth it. It's not a hype watch. Is what
compared
is what he's
like
saying.
okay, I'm wondering there's a lot of things being said there, but one,
Okay, yeah, if you're
it's
gonna
got more
compare it to
color.
a Pepsi,
Okay,
maybe.
okay.
All
Compared
right.
to Pepsi, I don't think there's really any challenge here. I think this has more color, despite only half of the bezel being literally a color. It has a blue that's literally blue. So if you like the color blue, it's for you.
It's an
The
unusual
only
color.
downside to it is the color combo of blue and black is very masculine. This isn't a very unisex watch. Women would prefer the Pepsi. My wife would prefer the Pepsi. That's not a slight. I'm just saying, like those pastel
No.
colors are just
Rolex
far more
wants the
feminine.
Batman. He says the Batman's better. You know what? Who am I to say? But I think it just looks better. Jubilee not wearing it probably is probably better than yours.
Oh, I see.
I'll fall to that logic.
Well, I think the problem, like with the Oyster, it's more masculine. It's a little bit more everyday look. But for me, I'd be taking the 11 series Submariner Glide Lock Oyster bracelet and popping it on here. So the only downside for me for that is I'd be pulling it off the Hulk, which is a far more valuable watch. Just to Franken watch up my Batman for a day. But it's the right thing to do. It's my watch. I can do it when I eventually wear it.
I don't know. He keeps telling me, he's like, just don't go for the Batgirl. He said, get the Batman. He said, the Batgirl's all hype.
You should get what you want. I think in a collection, you should get Jubilee in a collection, because your collection probably has a ton of Oyster on it, right? A ton of Oyster bracelets.
Yeah. I mean, end of the day, me and Lolex are just busting balls. I mean, because I told him the two-tone Wasp Submariner is a compromise to the Bluesy. It's what you get when you can't get the Bluesy, essentially. But I mean, the only experience I've had with Jubilee, a good quality Jubilee, so to speak, is with my Omega, and I do like it. But I'm currently selling it right now, or trying to, anyways, because I've got two big ass watches now, and I only want one. Yeah. And let's be frank. I mean, the Rolex is gonna. I don't know, the Rolex. You don't. Well, actually, there's more behind that than I'm letting on, but that's beside the point. But I've never had like official Rolex Jubilee.
Right. Well, I think the only reason to go for the Batman is if it's your one and done, in which case the Oyster bracelet is not being redundant in any way. You don't have another watch to say, oh, I wish I had a different bracelet. And then as a one and done, the Batman's really good. It's close to being everydayable. Those PCLs are the only knock on that. And then if you happen to eventually or will or do have the Pepsi already, in which case that looks better in my opinion on the Jubilee, no question. And in that case, put the Batman on the Oyster.
Jimmy
but
says,
those are pretty specific.
Nice Batgirl. How do you rate the Riddler? I guess this is what we are calling the new GMT Master 2.
I don't mind the Riddler name. I think it makes it. I think it's a product really for VIPs, and that is for people who actually already have a lot of Rolexes, including they absolutely already have a GMT Master 2, and so you have people like me who already have a Batman. You have people who have a Pepsi. The Riddler makes an incredible second GMT Master 2 in your collection. It's a different color, and then it's flipped over. It offers enough difference, and then you'll get the opposite of whatever bracelet you had on your first. So as a second GMT Master 2, it's the ultimate. But I don't think it'll be anybody's first. But it'll be nobody's first. Quite frankly, the gray prices are too high. It's nobody's. It hasn't had enough time for anyone to go like, oh, that's my watch. That's the iconic watch that I've wanted forever. It's like, no, it literally hasn't only existed for a month. So it's really a watch for VIPs and collectors who have established relationships to want something again. Because eventually you get to the point in a collection and you're kind of done with Rolex. Like I'm happy to say I'm satisfied. If I never get another Rolex, my collection is still complete. But you know what? If I was throwing more things in just because I'm greedy, I'd get a gold Daytona, I'll grab the Explorer 2, I'll grab a left-hand GMT. Won't happen, but
yeah, I mean, I think that's a good take on it, because again, the way Rolex game is being played right now, that's not gonna That's not going to be available to most. And who knows? They might play around with it in a year already. They might eliminate it from production altogether. Who knows? Because they haven't done anything new for it, for sure. They just flipped it around, right? They haven't made a new movement for it. They might just keep that bezel insert and make a regular one, make a regular.
It's just a dial and a date insert. That's it.
Yep. What are you working on?
I have two minds. They could go either way. They could really flood the market with them. Everyone who's already got GMT Master 2 should pick this one up. Or they could make it hardcore collectible. They could really go either way. It won't last forever, that's for sure. But neither will the Batman. I don't think the Batman's days have got much longer to live.
So you think if they bring in another bezel insert, that's the one they would eliminate?
Yeah, 100%. They're not going to get rid of the Pepsi. The Pepsi will always be there. The Batman was always described as a transitional sort of, while they couldn't do the Pepsi, we'll do this. It's not a classic color for Rolex. It's just, it's not long for the world. And then at that point, when it gets discontinued, everyone's going to go, oh, right, yeah, I forgot. That's the one that was special, and we should have got that. Honestly, that's where I think it'll be. I mean, I do have some bias. I like the Batman personally, but it's like one of the original hype watches. When the BLNR came out, it was like the hype watch. Like it was Daytona, and then the very first watch that was like extremely hyped and was impossible to get from day one and was doing the whole above premium thing was the BLNR.
That's true. Yeah, in the modern lineup, certainly that's after the Daytona for a long while, especially until they started. Well, wait a second. When did the BLNR come out?
I think 2015.
Right.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I remember reading articles in sort of like mainstream news magazine saying like this 126 and 116710 BLNRs, and I remember in my head at the time, what does that last 4 letters mean? It's like Berliner or something like that. What the
hell? Jimmy Black has been gone for 2 years now.
Yeah, I didn't
nobody
see
wants
any research.
black.
Not much love there.
Nobody even noticed, I guess.
Nobody noticed.
All right.
Nobody noticed its existence or its disappearance.
Jimmy says, I'd like to know the breakdown of GMT variants and how they sell. Well, that kind of information Rolex never releases. So that's like top secret.
But what do you mean? Like just how many in the world? One thing's for sure is there's far less Batman than Pepsi. Just the demand for Pepsi is just so extreme that it's
Batmans or Batgirls?
Same thing. Batman encompasses the watch. If you say Batgirl, I know you're talking Jubilee. If you just say Batman, I really don't know whether it means Oyster or Jubilee. Like I don't think the bracelet should get its own name necessarily. Like it was always a mistake calling the Batgirl the Batgirl. I like the name. It's fine. I call it the Batgirl, but clearly it was a mistake. You can't
you can
name
always
it
call
differently
it
just because the bracelet.
Bruce Wayne, as some others would call it.
No.
The sales of dial variants. You mean the bezel? Look, I mean, I think roughly we will never know the exact numbers, right? The way Rolex deal with this.
Yeah.
But you can already guess. Even forget about the present point. With Rolex, you always look at which one is more iconic, which one is more representative of that particular model. And that is, whether you like the current execution or not, the Pepsi. That's how it came out. That's what's still leading the market. Same thing with the Oyster bracelet, right? On the Oyster bracelet, it makes more sense to more people. So that probably sells most. Pepsi on an Oyster, Pepsi on a Jubilee. Then probably it's Batman on an Oyster, Batman on a Jubilee in terms of numbers and pure sales. But then again, we will never know. But roughly Pepsi, Batman, and I think in either case, this Sprite or Riddler or the new GMT Master left-hand drive, I think that will always be the niche as long as it stays a left-hander.
Well, I think that if I had to think about like supply ratios, like what's actually being delivered, not demand, not difficulty, but just what's being delivered, I would guess that the Batman is outnumbered 4 or 5 to 1 compared to the Pepsi. Like I could imagine a small AD only gets a Batman like one every 1 or 2 months, while they probably get at least one Pepsi every single month at like a single case AD, and multiply that up to 8 cases, whatever, so you have like 8 Pepsis delivered each month to a big AD, and then maybe 2 Pepsis delivered over that same time period.
Wow, you think but they're outnumbered by that much, huh?
Yeah, most people, you ask them between the two, what do they want? It's the Pepsi, right?
Yeah, and I mean, again, from a personal standpoint, the only way I can make sense of that is because it's the more iconic color combination for that particular model.
Has a higher gray market price too. That influences people too.
Of course. Guys, we're going to go on for a little longer, but hey, if you have been enjoying the stream, please don't forget to upvote, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe. For me, each and every subscriber counts. Each and every message counts. I engage with everyone and everything, no matter what. So keep them coming. And yeah, spread the word, man. Share the link on other platforms. We need to bring in more people. Jimmy says, yes, I meant the bezel color. Getting late here, so I'm getting a little bit punchy. LOL. Hey, man. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, if they left the green in production for too long, it'll eventually get very soft. For the reason I described before, that I don't think it's many people's first choice.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a reason why it absolutely can't stay in there for very long. But, who knows what Rolex wants? Doesn't really matter, right? What we want.
It really doesn't. Oh. I mean, and also they don't, some of it is a good thing, right? Rolex doesn't have to think much about whether something would sell or not. They don't have to make decisions based purely on marketing, purely on having to move this or that much units, because they already do. They sell no matter what. And some of it is unfortunately bad because it creates a certain inertia. They don't even have to try. I mean, we were talking about presentation boxes.
Yeah. I mean, they're putting asbestos in watches now, so
Just to clarify, that refers to the new dial semi-precious stone called Falcon's Eye by Rolex. Hey, but I mean, in either case, it's at some level they're not even trying. At another level, of course, not having to follow every single market trend, not having to follow the whims of delusional fantasists, crazy narcissist as a CEO, being, in the control ultimately of a board of trustees of a charitable foundation gives them some liberty in moving products like this that will sell anyways. And if they don't do well at all, they can just move on from them without thinking much about it, with pure abandon.
Mm-hmm. I heard the charitable trust, its stated purpose is to train watchmakers and a few other things, including like their ambassadorships or something like that might be through the trust. I'm not exactly sure
Yeah.
what's happening there, but Is this true? I heard that there's so many Rolex facts out there.
I know Hans Wilsdorf, having grown up as an orphan, I think they have a few charitable causes linked to orphan children as well.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Thankfully, it's not so
anything
much a
beyond
problem
that.
anymore.
Everything all right?
My son just dropped his chocolate milk.
Okay, that's
He's
fine.
good.
I thought it was something more serious for a second, but yeah. I mean, look, if I dropped my chocolate milk, I would be crying at this point in time. So
Yeah,
my drink is
but the orphan thing, I just mean in the Western world, like children are highly desirable. As in, I'm not sure that there are actually significant numbers of orphan children that don't have a home, like there used to be in the old days where they were neglected and all sorts of things.
you would be surprised, especially with everything that has been going on in foster homes and group homes, etc.
Mhm.
And I'm not even talking about situations that are outright physically and, God forbid, sexually abusive. It's just yeah, it's I don't think it's just a second, third world problem. There are a lot of children who need the care of
The
good parents.
problem is it's so
Good
expensive.
parents.
It's so expensive in the hoops that you have to jump through nowadays. It becomes a drag.
To adopt a child, you mean?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I mean, my wife and I were having a lot of trouble having our daughter. We're very lucky. We got her. She's 7 weeks old now. But we were thinking about starting along the lines of process of adoption. But the real fashionable thing right now is Korean babies.
Really?
Yeah, the main issue is that they've got a very conservative culture there. So out of wedlock babies is like a huge no-no. So they'll be giving them up for that reason. They might be middle class or so forth, and they'll put up their kid for adoption simply because they don't have a relationship that is rock solid, and it
Yeah,
looks bad.
I had not heard of this, but it's interesting.
Yeah,
Jimmy
but
says
that pool of that pool of children is very different to the ones you find in the Western world, where it's usually because the mother's like a crack addict or something like that.
well, I'm not sure that's universally true, but yes.
Well, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
you get to the bottom of the barrel. That's what happens, and unfortunately, kids of parents that are bad people don't tend to be that good either. There's certain hereditary and as well as environmental factors that mean this could be a real trouble thing. And bless the parents that are happy to do that. It's just not everyone needs to sign up for that, right?
It's not easy taking care of the trailer park trash. And I'm not trying to be a dick there.
Oh,
It's just,
whoa,
it
whoa,
is what
whoa,
it is.
whoa, whoa. Okay, well, I'm sorry, guys. I mean, the conversation was already quite bad, but we're not going there. We're not gonna demean people because of where they come from. Not on this channel. I will not allow it.
Yeah, I
Jimmy
come
says,
from
yes,
very poor background.
okay. Pivot, quick pivot. Yes, that's a very good point. Rolex is in the enviable spot of not giving a fuck as everyone wants them to do. Jimmy says, and again, it would never happen, but imagine if they could make a documentary about Rolex. They grant them full access. I know, delusional fantasy. 0 to 1,000, GB Vol says. Hey. Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, I understand, that the larger, more nuanced conversation could be interesting, but this is not the platform, and certainly I can't allow, man. Even if you were talking about epigenetics, it's a very, very complex discussion, and I'm not sure the
I wasn't
channel
talking about.
is
I
appropriate
wasn't
for it.
talking about that. I was just talking about like in utero, like that stuff matters too.
Of course, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we're not getting a Rolex documentary anytime soon, guys. I'm sorry. I think that it's you need to get an entire team, perhaps, and I'm sure that won't be an enviable spot either. But break into the Rolex headquarters or something, like a Watergate kind of
No.
situation. Like
Or
Our
a
like when
whole
they
only
tried to
hope.
expose.
storm Area 41, you just got to storm the Rolex headquarters.
That's the only way. That's the only way we can gain that sort of access to information. Yeah, we have to organize like the youth of today who is into hype watches, into storming the Rolex headquarters in BNBL.
That would be wild,
No,
honestly. That would be
our
something.
only hope is that Jean-Frédéric Dufour, CEO Rolex, picks up an old Roald Dahl book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then also decides to replicate the idea of choosing the next CEO by lottery with a golden ticket.
But I mean, yeah, even the next CEO, I don't think will. Yeah, as soon as you said that, I thought Watergate as well. It has to be like, someone has to wiretap the shit out of all the foundation members and the CEO, and then, somehow, speaking of wiretapping, um, use a Trojan horse. Hey, it's a time-honored strategy. It is a time-honored strategy. But yeah, I think it's been pretty, even that succession of CEOs, man, it's been pretty well regulated. They don't always get exactly what they want, but um, I don't
I
think
wonder
they're
what they do, to be honest. I wonder what they do.
what a Rolex CEO does.
Yeah, I mean, I understand production, but really the number of new products and quote unquote strategy doesn't really look like a lot of work, to be honest.
Honestly, I was just having a similar discussion with a friend, but it was more of a broad question, like, what do the CEOs of these multinational corporations actually do? Like, I would really like to know. I'm not even trying to be funny or skeptical or much less cynical. I actually really don't know what kind of work goes into that level of executive position, quite frankly. Whether we are talking about Rolex, Sony, um, I don't know, like
I think we're putting
Walmart.
Rolex on too high of a pedestal when you refer to that. Like the CEO of Sony would be an exponentially more complicated job. Like number of product lines, total amount of revenue, outlets, distribution, supply chains, like far more complicated than what even Rolex has to do. I mean, what's the revenue split between those two? We can look that up.
You're right. Well, okay then. What would be a comparable company to Rolex from another industry?
Yeah.
Speaking of a million units of a
So
luxury item.
so Rolex is looking at $5.2 billion worth of sales. To put in comparison, I think an individual Costco will produce revenue somewhere in the order of 2 billion a year, I think. Let's see. What does a Costco put out? Costco revenue per store. How many stores? Costco, 166 billion revenue. 828.
Jimmy says CEOs, they formulate the organization's modus operandi and then hire the right people to carry it out. That's fine. And they also, they are the public face of a company, right? They handle a lot of the social and public functions. They represent the brand in both corporate and social events. That's also fine. But I would really like to, I'm asking at a very fundamental level, like from beginning to end, what does a day look like for the CEO of a Swiss luxury watch company?
Yeah.
I would like to know that.
So to compare it to the number of Costco, so average Costco is producing $200 million of revenue. So to meet Rolex's revenue, 5.2 billion, you're talking about 26 Costcos. And it's like 26 Costco's is a pretty big operation. They probably deal with millions of products compared to Rolex.
Regional manager.
Regional manager. Well, would it even be regional? Like it's probably about 3 or 4 cities worth of Costco's, I'd say. So yeah, maybe a regional manager, maybe even just California. Like there's probably like 30 or 40 in California.
Just
so half
California? California is a big state, I think.
Yeah,
just
I imagine there's like 3 or 4
than...
Costco's per city or more, depending on the city. So I imagine there's probably like 40, 50 Costco's across the state. So just managing half of the Costco's in the state would be a more complex job than managing Rolex, I imagine. Like the way they earn their revenue has to be through millions of different products, far more higher number of employees, far more relationships. I honestly, like we probably think too highly of Rolex in that position. It really, that level of revenue and responsibility is probably more akin to a middle manager in any S&P 500 company. I'm not saying it requires the same skills, but just, the complexity of the position.
Jimmy says, yeah, day in the life of a Rolex CEO would be interesting to know. I would gather a lot of meetings and such, for sure. It would be an interesting.
There was a
it doesn't
podcast.
have to be Rolex. It doesn't have to be Rolex, but any.
Yeah, there was a podcast recently with the CEO of Panerai, and he talked about his day in a life, and he says basically just back-to-back meetings all day. He never does lunch. He does start early, 5 a.m. every day, and maybe the first meeting starts at like 7, but he always finishes at 5 p.m. He says. So yeah, there are other CEOs, and it's probably comparable.
I'd be more interested in how they do the damage control, so to speak, like Tag Heuer when they went through that whole phase of plastic spacers in their watches. I'd actually be more interested in how they like sit down with the board and like how do we address this? How do we fix it?
Wait, what happened?
So like Tag Heuer is obviously the most controversial brand, but and Tag Heuer kind of said, oh yeah, we made our first in-house movement ever. I believe it's for the Ocarissa. I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. And then they just turned out to be like Seiko movements. People found out they're cracking them open. They're just Seiko movements, like there's spacers in them that were made out of plastic. And keep in mind, Tag Heuer is charging like $2,500 for these things. So yeah, Tag Heuer got some. That's part of the reason why a lot of people hate Tag. It's because they lied about their movements.
Didn't Archie cover this? Like he
a lot of people have covered this. A lot of people have covered this. And Panerai is in the same boat. Where like Panerai, like they lied about their movements and they said, oh, it's in house, and it turns out to be like an ETA or an Edabase or a Seiko movement. I'm actually more curious on how they address the damage control. Like I wonder how like the brainstorming goes. Like how can we convince people that we are not in the wrong type thing?
By putting my own son as the CEO of that company, for example, that could work. Like if I'm the CEO of that luxury conglomerate, I would just put my own son, who is right out of college, to lead the company. I think that would be a great solution. I wonder if they thought about that at LVMH.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so I think a lot of the PR functions are actually completely outsourced, which is evident in Panerai posting images of fake Panerais on their Instagram.
Oh well, I mean, if you think of the social media, of course, I mean, of course, that doesn't have anything directly to do with the CEO. But let's say I'm thinking of something like, for example, IWC, right? If as the team sponsor of Mercedes AMG Petronas, they were just introducing with the Miami GP their new watch, right? That was for the first time team issued. You know, everyone got one. Everyone in the paddock had one. For that function, for example, the CEO actually came to Miami, right? I'm talking about that sort of public-facing function, or like, you know, if they have a trade show, like, you know, like Basel used to be, like Watches and Wonders is now, or like if they collaborate with an important golf tournament, or with a charity, right? When Alango and Zone, for example, is doing the Concorso d'Eleganza in, you know, in Lake Como, the CEO comes, the design and development director comes, the marketing marketing executive is there, the chief marketing executive is there. I'm talking about something like that. Of course, they won't be running their Instagram account. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
that's a full-time job.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most prominent, made himself prominent, was the Audemars Piguet CEO, just like chumming up with all the Marvel.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something really rubbed me up the wrong way in all of the cringe videos AP put on their YouTube. It just seemed like a way for him to hobnob with some Hollywood elites, basically.
Well, I mean, the thing is, that's that is right up their alley. You know, Audemars Piguet has been pretty hot, especially with the Royal Oak, among celebrities since early 2000s, basically. So I think you have to be someone like that, for better or worse, to be AP's CEO.
Well, I mean, they did the product placement game too. I mean, I was watching Terminator 3 the other day, and just like everyone had APs, including the pickup truck driver, and just everyone had APs apparently.
Pauli reminds everyone to upvote. Yes, guys, as we are closing, please do upvote. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Hit the bell icon. Hey, spread the word. Share the link on other platforms. And if you want to help out, if you want to support, if you want to contribute, you know how. It's in the ticker right there. So don't be shy. Help the channel become self-sustaining before we can get monetized. Yeah, I think you gave an even better example. I think compared to Benamias, Granger or Granger Air, whatever his name is, of IWC CEO, he's much less obnoxious. He's just a little, I guess, I don't know, strikes me as trying to be a little cool and in a contrived fashion as well, which is Benamias' shtick. You know, it's already done and overdone. So why do it for another brand? So sometimes I wonder, for that reason, if Georges Kern stayed at Breitling rather than, stayed at IWC rather than going to Breitling, what would have happened? But anyway, you can't always get what you want. Eddie asks this question, but Aussie is no longer in Australia. That's hence Aussie.
Oh no, I think he's just making a statement.
Is it still super hard to get a Rolex in Australia? I'm talking about Datejust at NAD.
I was going to say, so I don't know. I imagine that there might have actually been a really good opportunity while the borders were closed to get one. I kept trying to poke my mother-in-law, hey, you should be like hammering on the door of your AD while the Chinese tourists are out of town permanently, or at least semi-permanently for 2 years straight. But yeah, I can't imagine anything Rolex is easy. I had a friend visit an AD in Melbourne, Australia recently, and he said they wouldn't even. They told him he need an appointment and so and such. Like, yeah, they're not even remotely interested in hearing anyone. The demand in Australia is just too high. I don't know what it is. It just seems like Australia is the hardest market in the world. Seems to be like there's just too much money compared to other costs of living. The luxury stuff just doesn't seem as bad. And Australians are all punters, so they all sort of know, like, as soon as they get a hint that something is worth more than what they could pay for it, like the entire city shows up on the front door, which is what happened with the Moonswatch release, where there was more than 10,000 people at Chadstone Shopping Centre for 150 watches. And that's not an exaggeration. They genuinely looked like there was close to 10,000 in line.
Well, I mean, that hustle culture is basically everywhere, but I think, you use the word familiar to people in Archiverse by now, so.
No, it's true. Like Australians, that they get a sniff of anything, and then all of a sudden, like the entire city is bearing down on it. It doesn't matter what the unenumerated costs might be, like your time and your effort, and maybe even your safety. None of these things come into question. If they can get a buck, they'll move on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Australia is, in a way, closer to Asia. I mean, not in a way, literally closer to Asia than the US is, for example. And it's still, I mean, it's a pretty big country still. I'm sure they get decent numbers of watches. It might not be the highest per capita in the world, but still probably it gets a lot of watches, but they also get a lot of buyers, from out of the country too.
Yeah, it's a combo of buyers from outside the country, and then within the country, Australian incomes are not low, and like cities like Melbourne and Sydney just have a lot of people in them at the price level that can afford a Rolex. So it's just completely outstrips supply. I think compared to any other place in the world, it sounds like Australia is the worst.
Yeah, I think it kind of sounds like California to me in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a lot of people who have decent income, considerable amount of disposable income.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine getting a Rolex in Bay Area at all, like especially.
Yeah, people spend a lot of money on luxury items. There are a lot of people who come from abroad to make luxury purchases here. So I feel like in a way it would resemble California. Again, not everything is impossible to get here if you have some sort of established relationship. But yeah, in either case, it's not easy. It's not easy.
I mean, I think that Las Vegas might be the easiest. I mean, that's not why I moved here, but it seems to have a lot of things going for it. It's got an unusually high number of ADs compared to its population base, and its population, the median income here is like half of that of the actual left coast cities.
Mm-hmm. I did speculate that, and I'm glad you felt like you had to defend yourself, because I did tell you before, not in one of those live streams, but like, I sometimes suspect that you live in Las Vegas to have that easy access to the strip and all the authorized dealers, basically.
Hey, it is a factor. It is a factor. Like if we would leave. Like if I moved to Florida, I got no hope. I only hear bad things about Florida too. Everyone wants a Rolex there, and they can afford it too.
Look, I mean, the thing is with you actually have not only an established but like a thriving relationship with your authorized dealer, as you know, as a business partner, but also as a real friend, as you described at times. So you can't transplant that elsewhere. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. I'm not going to start again. Like I was telling Lena, like what would happen? What would it look like to try start again? It's not going to happen. Like, because also the collection is starting off with so many of the hot watches done. I'd only be asking for things like gold Daytonas and impossible shit, basically.
Right.
But I'm done. I realize I've got too many watches. I'm done. Like I looked at it. Basically, I've only got out of, I think 10's getting already too much,
Yeah.
and I'm at 8 luxury watches, and I want 4 more, and I really don't know what I'd remove out of that. So I don't know.
But you
I don't know.
you think 10 is your ceiling? So if you get 4, 2 might have to go. Is that what you're saying?
There has to be some gravity, because I'm not like Archie. I think if you're not actually wearing the watch, it actually is not good. Now, the Batman aside, that will eventually be worn a lot, but yeah, if you're not actually wearing them, that's the value. That's the fundamental value. So yeah, absolutely, every watch that you add is actually reducing the value of all of the watches, right? As long as you've got enough that when you put on a new watch, it can feel like something special each time. So I haven't seen my black sub in a while, and so I can't wait to put that on them tomorrow. I pulled it out of the safe deposit box today, and I'm like, this thing's really cool. I got the Hulk. I've been wearing that for a while, but I really just wanted something in black,
Yeah.
and so I'm excited. So as long as you get that feeling of excitement all the time, that's sort of like maximum. Now, if you keep adding watches on top of that, but you're already getting that feeling of it being already new again to you each time, then I'm just not sure that it matters that much.
Chris Clues, good morning. And Pauli, thanks for reminding everyone to upvote again. Yeah, my guys, people from the UK are just waking up and joining. I don't think we will go for much longer, but I promise, starting next week, there will be more pre-shows to the Archie Luxury stream. So we will have more content coming your way in no time. But I do apologize because we will be signing off quite shortly. But welcome anyways. And hey, if you drop an upvote, hit the like button. That's more than enough for me. Joe, with that being said, do you have any final statements?
Final statements. You know what? Me and Lolix have been going back and forth quite a bit. And guys, hold the line. Essentially, hold the line for yourselves. Product is going to start slowly coming into your boutiques or ADs. Don't sell, obviously, right now, unless you feel like you're confident enough, or you feel like the hit's going to be small enough for you to swallow. But I mean, just hold tight, because everything's gone cactus for the time being. So I mean, you don't want to sell and you don't want to buy. Like I said, it'll brighten up here in the next couple months, I feel like.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think right now people have to be really cautious about what they buy at the AD, and especially at Grey, of course. I think in general what's happened, what's evident, you look at prices and who's buying and who's not, is that the price has not adjusted to where the volume is picking up again, basically. So it means that liquidity's dried up, and the prices that you see quoted for comps on the grey market are probably far from like realistic prices, especially far from what they would offer you for that watch. So be very, very careful for any watch that is that you're not buying entirely just for yourself. and your own desire for it. And if the investment factor is part of it, and I'm not going to deny that you should ignore it, but a lot of these things probably don't hold. So for example, if you're looking at, like I was looking at recently, a Yachtmaster, and the gray prices were like 25% above the MSRP, but I think in practice, if you try to offload immediately, it's probably under MSRP plus tax. And so just take those gray prices with a huge grain of salt and be wary of what you're buying, even at an AD, especially on like precious metal, Rolex precious metal, even sports. I'd say is probably underwater right now. So don't buy it thinking, oh, it's got Rolex, it's sports, it's good. You really need to fall back on Archie's old adages of steal sports Rolex. But perhaps even more important than the investment aspect is buy the watch that you actually want. Like if you can get the watch you absolutely want, then there's really no issue with respect to price. And I don't mean ignore it completely, but you got to be buying for the right reason. I'm hopefully eventually buying a gold Daytona. I think even those will be soft again, just like they were in 2019. But I'll be buying it because I actually want it, not because it's a flex piece or.
And also you'll be buying, if you do, at retail, right? Let's
Yeah, but I think like the retail prices on especially precious metal watches will probably be above what the gray market is willing to offer you for that watch. So these aren't no-brainer purchases anymore. And you say, oh, it's only 2 or 3% difference. Well, once you start looking at a $40,000
precious
watch,
metal Daytona.
well, you pointed out like the white golds are starting to look very similar to MSRP. Maybe not with the current dials, but those are for you buying. But if a gray dealer is going to buy off you,
yeah,
well, what are they offering you?
Those are almost 3 generations before the Oyster Flex, so it is a little different. But yeah, no, I agree by and large. But like, it's not tomorrow that you might be able to get a precious metal Daytona on Oyster Flex less than retail in the secondary market. I think that's a little too optimistic.
No. Yeah, I'm not necessarily talking about gray prices actually going below retail. It's just that not everything at retail is a no-brainer. Like that's sort of like been drummed in over the last 6 months. So if they offer it to you at an AD, just buy it. There's no question, just buy it. I honestly think you can lose money at the AD right now. That's all I'm saying. And it may not be obvious to you because you say, oh, the price is still high. It's like, yeah, if you try to sell it to them, they might just say, we don't need that right now.
Jimmy, take care, man. Good night. Thank you for the kind words. We're signing off soon as well. No, I agree with that. I think not every single piece at retail is, as an investment, a good value right now. Certainly, I think if you're looking for a good deal in the secondary market, no matter what watch, not only Rolex, take your time. Wait until the end of the year, at least, if you ask me. Maybe even a few months into 2023. At retail, of course, if it's stainless steel, sports / professional Rolex, go for it. If it is anything else, buy it if you like it. Buy it if you love it. Buy it if you are going to stay with that watch at least midterm to long term. Because anything at this moment in time that is not very hot and overhyped, you can't turn around and sell it. You can. I mean, think of a two-tone Sea Dweller, right? By the way, it's trending on the gray market. It doesn't really come with a huge premium.
It's like
and again,
21 or 22.
Yeah, and as Ozzy is saying, that's what the gray market, by and large, offers you, right? If you were to try to sell it to a gray market dealer, obviously they would offer you much less. if you were to take your time and find the right buyer yourself, if you are a trustworthy seller yourself, you could probably still sell it without losing money. But it's not like 3 months before, where you could actually, if you really hate the piece, perhaps you could get rid of it easily, and maybe at at a significant profit too. I don't think it's that time anymore. Hey, depending on what's going on, those times might even come back. I don't know. But I think in the short term, the trend is going to continue in this way. So if you're looking for deals in the secondary market, hold out a little longer. If you are buying at retail, negotiate with everything that you can. Don't follow any of the rules. If people tell you, oh, it's a boutique and you can't ask for a discount, what's the worst thing that can happen? They will say, well, this is a boutique, we don't give you a discount. They might
Get
also
fired.
turn around. They might also turn around and say, hey, I talked to my manager and we can give you 5%. They used to do stuff like that all the time. Or they will say, we'll throw this in and that too. So especially if you're at an AD and you already have a relationship, do yourself a favor, put on your brave face and ask for a sizable discount. With Rolex, they might still say no. They might still laugh at your face, whatever. With every other brand, trust me, at this point in time, they will give you some sort of discount. They will cut you some kind of a deal. So this is the time to wait it out, play it safe. It might not have turned into the buyer's market that it was a few years ago, but it's not that kind of cutthroat seller's market either, as it was 2 months before. So you can take the quote unquote risk of sitting tight and not making any huge decisions at this point in time, or take any huge risks, I should say.
Yeah, I think prices still have to correct. All dealers are just hoping the reopening of the Chinese market will restore the demand they need to start, liquidating watches again.
Yeah.
Basically, volume is way down, and they're not taking their licks and pricing it where volume will pick up again, basically. And so they're bleeding a little right now, but they're all sort of, by holding the price where it is but not entertaining more volume, they're sort of trying to ride it out. They're trying to hold the prices where they are, and then hopefully demand just picks up again, spontaneously. But I think they're ultimately wrong, and you'll start seeing gray dealers start to capitulate and just say, hey, we're just going to take this one-time loss and start trading at the actual market price again, the price that'll actually clear these watches in and out the door.
It's basically whoever blinks first.
Yeah.
That's one way to look at it. All right, guys. Thank you again for everything. We will see you tomorrow. But before then, again, thank you for your presence and support. Thank you, Joe, for being a valuable member of this panel, even when you are not paid for it. It's great work. People say in the audience that you look tired or what, but hey, you pulled through. We finished this stream, and Ozzy, thanks for dropping by. Even if it was just a flex on Joe with your Batgirl, I appreciated it.
I think I'm beginning to think like, well, yeah, I mean, it's not that good of a watch, let's be honest.
Just like what you like, Meech. If you told me not to show it, I wouldn't have shown it.
Yeah, I think it broke his heart a little bit, but it's okay. It's okay. Joe is
Hey,
a big
put
boy.
it this way, I haven't earned it yet. I don't wear it yet.
Yeah, guys, the story is again that Ozzy basically put it away because he's waiting for that special occasion for him to bring it out, size it for his wrist, and wear it proudly. So I'm sure it's gonna happen quite soon. All right, guys. Thank you again for everything. Upvote on the way out, and thank you again. I appreciate each and every one of you. Love you. Take care.